All right, welcome. What's going on? It is exactly 3:01. So, um, gonna wait for a little bit for some people to maybe come in and join us. Um, Let me know if you're here. Say hi in the chat. Uh, but yeah, I'm just chilling until more people join in. Um, the basic plan today is to just go over some fundamental topics on Heidegger. Um, I was watching a couple of streams um, by my fellow streamers, Luminance Bloom and Return to Hegel, and they were talking about um, how to respond to people who um, have mm, maybe not the best interpretation of Heidegger. Maybe their interpretation of Heidegger can be somehow helped, assisted. And so I decided, why not, go ahead and do a stream where I talk about Heidegger a little more. Um, by the way, if you're on Twitch, if you're in the chat, just let me know if my mic and everything is okay, if you can hear me. But yeah, as I was saying, um, I thought this would be a good opportunity for me to talk about Heidegger, um, sort of from a ground up level, the way that I talk to my students. Hey, M Bugai, Matt Bugai, I know you from Facebook and from Empty Buddha. Empty Buddha, that's me. Sorry, I'm empty right now. From Luminance Bloom stream. Yes, thank you for coming. I am going to cover some Heideggerian basics. So yeah, if you have any specific questions about Heidegger, let me know in the chat, and we will go over that. I'm also like new to streaming, so I'm sort of trying my best to look at everything. Um, what we're gonna do is look at some of Heidegger's, a couple of his famous texts, a couple of his not so famous texts. Um, and we will not actually be covering Being in Time. And I'll tell you the reason why. There's two reasons. One, I forgot my copy in my office. So I don't have my copy of Being in Time, which has all my notes. Um, and while it is the more famous Heidegger uh, work, more famous of the Heideggerian works, it's not my favorite. I'm more of a late Heideggerian. I think later Heidegger is really where his thinking comes into its own. It's much richer. It's let go of a lot of his precedents of Husserl and Kant, and it's moving more towards this Taoist, Buddhist kind of esoteric kind of thinking. But um, there are two schools about this, that early Heidegger and later Heidegger basically were thinking two different projects. That early Heidegger was all fascinated about being, the capital B, big B being, and in a phenomenological sense, and that while the later Heidegger was interested more in uh, in the event of being, of going back to, um, in a way, what the Greeks were thinking, but appropriating it in our own new way. Um, and there are others who argue that those are not different topics or themes or ideas, really. And I think I fall in that latter camp. I fall in the second camp, which says that uh, he was not thinking two different things in those two parts of his life. Uh, and I'm so this is a pretty good book, Engaging Heidegger by Richard Capobianco, who's a great Heideggerian scholar. Um, and what I sort of agree with Capobianco on that. Heidegger has had one um, ruling thought throughout his entire academic career, and that is how to say being, right? Not the word being, but what being stands for, in a sense, right? Um, when I say mug, this stands for mug. When I say hand, this is what my hand stands for. This is what the word hand stands for. Right? In analytic philosophy, or generally in philosophy, we say these terms, they refer to something. They have referents. Right? When I say sunglasses, it refers to this thing or this kind of thing. If you show me a regular pair of glasses and say that that's a pair of sunglasses, I'll be like, you're wrong, because it's not referring to the right thing. Those are just glasses or spectacles. But if you say goggles or sunglasses, and I show you these, you'll be like, okay, that's the right referent. And Heidegger's entire philosophy throughout his early to his late life career has been to find, sort of going both ways, like what this word being refers to. Hey, return to Hegel. Welcome. Dingan Soch. Um, but welcome. I was saying that Heidegger's entire focus throughout his career has been on how to say being and what being means, and those are not two different things, right? Because um, for him, the word being, capital BEING, and all of these various words that people use to describe are placeholders to describe that which cannot be described in words. You want to call it God, you want to call it being. Um, Heidegger calls it logos, phusis, aletheia, or unconcealment. Um, he has all these various names, and he says people have given it various names throughout history. But these are all names, they're all labels for this elusive, ephemeral, amorphous, uh, I can't even say thing, because that it is because of which things can be or not be or be in different ways. So that's his problem. He says he says the history of philosophy, starting with Plato and all the way until the 20th century, has focused on beings, on individual beings and beings in general, and trying to find the essence of the world. why the way the world is the world is. What gives the world its worldly character? What makes sunglasses the sunglasses? Is it the sun? Is it the glasses? What makes the sun the sun? What makes the glasses the glasses? Right? What makes the sun the sun? Then you go down a physical, like a physics path. Okay, the sun is a star. Okay, then what makes the sun a star? Well, the sun is a name for the star. Okay, what is a star then? Then you have that physical explanation of helium, hydrogen and helium combining, and then you go, well, why does that happen? And why does that happen? And why does that happen? And sooner or later, you run out of beings. There's a limit to the how deep we can go, how far we can go, how far back into the past we can look at any given time, how small we can go at any given time. We are limited by that. And what happens because of those limits, Heidegger says, is every perspective we take to study any one thing necessarily only focuses on one aspect of it. And when it does that, oh yeah, I'll go over the being equals nothing. I got the whole thing here. I got what is metaphysics. We'll go through that. And so he doesn't say being is nothing. Heidegger says more like being is no thing. It is not anything. Nothing is the void. Nothing is the absence of beings. But for Heidegger, being as no thing is the very act of presencing and absencing. It is the process of coming into presence and going out of presence. But once presencing is done, that which is comes into presence as a thing. But while it is still being made, there is only being. Right? And that's how Heidegger brings actually Parmenides and Heraclitus together, because Heraclitus said there's no being, there's only becoming, and Parmenides said that there's no becoming, there's only being, and Heidegger's like, no, being is becoming. Because being cannot be a small b being, a thing, an entity. Because if it is an entity, what grounds that entity? What grounds that entity? And what grounds that entity? And you go down this regression. And he's like, there's two ways. There's you either go down that regression, or you say being is that entity which grounds all entities and itself. And that's sort of how Christian theology goes about it. And it's self-grounding. And he's like, both those options are not really they're not really good options. One is an infinite regress, and the other is this self-grounding. So the only way to get out of this is to maybe switch our thinking around. Does Heidegger stick to his guns that nothing is indeterminate void? Or does he eventually come to terms with no? So here's the thing. This is why it's important that he uses the hyphen, right? The nothing is void. The nothing is just as determinate as the things. Because there's nothing there. But in between nothing and something being there, there's this possibility. And this possibility is both no thing and not nothing. Why? Because according to Heidegger, it is the not. It is the not. It is a negation in this sense. So that's where that Hegelian idea comes in. Like being is it's not a negation, but it is itself negatived so that other things can be posited of. it and Heidegger's famous saying is that um, uh, being annihilates as the being of being. So when the being, capital B being proceeds, to use religious terminology, but it's a process, right? Into the beings that come from it, the capital B being ceases to be, right? That's why we can't find it anywhere as like some sort of thing in the creation of it is the creation, and we have to think of creation as a verb, right? So that's what I'm gonna do. Thanks to those questions. They're helping me guide, because what we're gonna do is um, uh, look at some of these words that Heidegger uses, right? Because ultimately, like I said, he's trying to find that one word that really truly says this no thing, but it's not nothing, and it's not any average everyday word that describes anything. And so we, for Heidegger, we have to transform our grammar, the way we read, the way we write, the way we speak, and then you sort of use that to recondition our thinking. So what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about some of the different names that Heidegger uses for being, and then I'll go over some of the stuff that I have in some notes I have on his writings that might be interesting. Um, makes sense. Nothing special. Nothing is something like the reciprocal product of. Reciprocal product is interesting, right? Because Procol come. So this is another thing we have to pay. We're going to have to pay attention to. Like, this is very important in Heidegger. Heidegger really wants us to look back at the etymology of things and where they come from. So reciprocal, right? Procol means comes from process, from proceed, like I said earlier. So reciprocal means proceeding back from. Oh yeah, dude, you know it. It's gonna be crazy. I'm really getting into the etymology here. But reciprocal is a very interesting, right? But even see product. Product is from proceed, from it's a forward moving, right? So reciprocal product itself is a oxymoron, and it's antithetical right there. So you can talk about it both as the reciprocal product, or that sort of original unity that unites opposites that Hegel and then Nietzsche talk about. Because Nietzsche talks about it, he says the eternal recurrence of the same with the capital S, and Heidegger really uses that same to mean being, because he says all of these names that he uses for being, aletheia, physis, logos, sein, uh, das nicht, the nothing. He says all of them are the same. The same what? We usually say, oh, that's the same thing, but being is not a thing. So you can't say they are the same thing as being, because all of these names refer to no thing, right? So that's why they are, well, the same. The same what? And that's where our that's the limit of our language and our thinking, is that our language is very ontic. It is about things, it's about entities, about ta onta, right? Remember from Aristotle, we get three kinds of entities: ta onta physica, the physical entities; ta onta logica, the logical entities, mathematical entities, and propositions; and ta onta ethica, right? Pragmatic, ethical, social entities, like good, bad, justice, things like that. And all of these are ta onta for Heidegger. These are ontic, and they're ontic insofar as you can make propositions about them, right? And I'm going to put in the chat here, and I'm going to break it up using his hyphen: proposition. Remember I said earlier, um, yeah, but then you are also the universe watching you be the universe, jack off. Right? So I said, remember earlier that being is itself negatived. And if being is negative, it is negative because other beings can be positive beings in the sense that beings that posit, beings that are and can be said to exist. Thank you, Return to Hegel. It's really, I was watching your stream yesterday, and I'm like I should really talk about this stuff. There needs to be some explanatory stuff going because I saw you and Zach talk about it, so I was like, all right, peace. Yeah, I'm mostly free. Let me know. We can talk. So yeah, as I was saying, thank you. Please follow Return to Hegel. I'm gonna do a shout out thing. Look at me struggling. There you go. Did a little shout out. As I was saying, so being is negative, then because being is negative, it gives other beings position. You can give them extension. You can make positions about them. Proposition, right? You can reposition them. You can unposition them. All of those things only apply to ontic entities, to beings, right? So think about it. Logical propositions, mathematical objects, shapes, numbers, sets, um, operators. Those are all things that can be talked about. They can be described. They have I'm going to write it again. Properties, right? They are properties because they are proper to them. But there has to be a them for something to be proper to it. Like there has to be a phone. Like you can't see it, but my laptop has like a purple skin. For that skin to be purple, there has to be a skin for the purple to apply to, right? For an elephant to be big, there has to be an elephant there. There has to be a referent for the property. Being has no referent. So positive, really negative, big, small, this, that. They don't really apply, right? These ontic propositional attitude doesn't really apply to being. So this is something I'm gonna again type in chat. Wait, and Boo guy says, Hegel really made me recognize the relation between posit and position. So simple, but mind is on a posit in essence. Yeah, no, right? It's stunning how we don't realize our grammar. For me, that was Heidegger when the relationships between words started popping out to me is insane. Like I didn't know property was because it's really, that's where it comes from. Something has a property. Why? Because it's proper to it's proper to them. It's proper to it. You have an essential property or an accidental property. An accidental property is not really a property, though. It just happens to have it. An essential property is what makes it, right? And it's a proper essence. And so being is actually, thank you for that, because it leads me to being for Heidegger is the proper essence of all things. All things exist as things, or could not have existed at all, or could have existed some other way. But that which is common amongst all of these things that makes them all things itself is no thing at all, and it can't be. And that's why we can't posit anything about it. We can't say that it is big or small, or it is everywhere. Because being is the is. Think about it. We don't use that word. In other languages, the word gets used similarly. Like for German, they use sein. Sein means thing, being, seins. But for us, when we say being, and then we say is. Being is, yeah. Not even, no, that, you're like, I can show you, he really struggles with that. There's a page here in Principle of Reason where he's trying to say being and reason are the same, because he's saying, look, the same way we do with being, that the only way we can ground things is if we say that which ground things is no thing at all, because what otherwise you get that infinite regression, or you get the self-grounding ultimate thing, which is hypocritical kind of. And he's like, that same thing happens with reason, right? Like, remember, Hume does that with Leibniz and the problem of induction, where he says, well, what grounds reason? What grounds induction? If you say induction itself, it takes you into circular reasoning. And then if you say otherwise, you get that it's just induction. And Heidegger ultimately says that no, reason is the same as being. The same. It's not the same thing because they're not things. It's the same as being because it is that which gives all little r reason, the capital R reason to be. And being is the reason for all little things to be. Right? This is how Heidegger connects. This is how Heidegger sort of answers Leibniz's famous, why are there all things instead of nothing at all? Why are there things instead of nothing at all? And he says, is thing the same? No, we'll get to that. Actually, Dasein for Heidegger is the same thing as being. It's no thing at all. Because we think of it as Dasein, we think of it as Dasein, but we translate it as being there. That's how we translate the English word. But it's not. It's their being. Their being. The there where things can be things. We are Dasein. We are. Dasein is, just like being is. So to say we are Dasein is we Dasein. We are the there where beings can be. Heidegger also calls it the clearing. Die Lichtung. An emptiness. This is what Nagarjuna calls it's what Nagarjuna calls shunyata, emptiness. It's confusing because space-time is it's you're not wrong, because think of what space-time is in the theory of relativity. Space-time is no thing in the scientific theory of relativity. We can measure extension and duration in space and in time, respectively. And in the fabric of space-time, matter and energy exist. But space and time are very much frameworks for physical existence. They are physicality. They don't have physicality of themselves. You can't capture time in a lab. You can't capture space. Space is where capturing takes place. Capturing takes place in time. So when you're saying it's confusing because space-time is not really relevant, you're still thinking space-time in the sort of classical sense. No, think Newtonian space-time. As the water in which everything happens. the sort of ethereal medium, but again, not medium, because it's not a particle or anything. It's a process of happening. It is the curve. It is the curving of space, not curved space. It is when matter reacts with space. They say, okay. They say, if anyone knows any more physics than me, please at Mac 1. Thank you. I hope you have a lovely day too. I'm just bullshitting. I have some adrenaline left over after class, so I'm just talking shit. My cat might join us here sometimes, but she's a big basket of fun. But thank you for that. I hope you have a lovely day too. What I was saying is, yeah, if someone knows more relativity and physics than me, please go off in the chat. I'd love to be corrected. But there's two basic postulates, so to speak, for the lack of a better word, of Einsteinian relativity. One is that matter and energy, as one thing, curve or warp space. And this warped space tells matter and energy how to move. That's it. Then to me, being is the spatial temporality in which matter and energy act as matter and energy. Right? That doesn't mean you can't measure it. The point is that when you measure it, you're cutting off other parts of it. You're only sort of measuring it. That you're only making position. So being there or there being, but it is position. You have to think of positionless. It is positionless, but it's where all the positing takes place. That's what I'm trying to say. The Cartesian framework of X and Y itself does not have an XY coordinate because the coordinates exist in the Cartesian plane. The Cartesian plane is the being there where any Euclidean geometric object can exist. If I'm sort of making my example a bit, making my illustration a bit more clear, right? You can say on the Earth that X city exists on so and so latitude north and so longitude east, right? But can you tell me, like, you can say the equator is at 0 degrees, right? All right, 0 degrees is this line called the equator. But can the equator itself have a latitude and longitude coordinate system? Or latitude and longitude coordinate? No, because the equator is a latitude, right? And I want to make something clear here. Is a latitude a noun or a verb? Because we usually think of it as noun. But there's 14 words, 14 letter words that end in tude. Inexactitude, ingratitude, decrepitude, pulchritude, vicissitude, incertitude, disquietude, senectitude, promptitude, ineptitude, solicitude, exactitude, similitude, infinitude, plentitude, inaptitude, definitude. Those sound like verbs. Those sound like descriptions of actions. So we're taught that latitudes are lines. They're these things. They're not. They're latitudes insofar as they exist in our as mathematical objects. in their own sort of region, they are the X and Y plane. They can't themselves have coordinates, right? And so the latitude and longitude themselves are the coordinating, because of which all the other points can get their coordinates. And you can say you have a circle at 0, 0, or draw a line from 1, 0 to 3, 4, or, do trigonometry and stuff like that. And when you think about it like this, you think about it that what Heidegger is saying is actually very stuff that we know. Stuff that we know to be kind of true. Common sense. Right? Like almost, and it's Heidegger's point is that, yeah, the history of philosophy has led us wrong. It's stupid that we've thought that the being of all beings could be a being, and we've just gone ahead with it. And that we've had substance metaphysics. Yeah, the point, yeah, right. The point 1, 2 itself has no coordinate value because it is a coordinate value. It is the coordinating and the valuing that right? The valuing comes from the numbers, and the coordinating comes from the two together, ordinating orders, one order this way and one order this way coming together to give you a valuing. And Heidegger's, like, what if we're talking Heidegger basics, the biggest thing I can assure you will help is forgetting everything you learned about what words mean. Forget everything you learned about what words mean. Let the word tell you. Go look up the etymology for every single word that you use. You will be astounded how stupid our language has been and how stupidly we've conditioned our language. And how most of philosophy is just dumb shit arguing in an incorrect language, no matter what language. I'm not talking about English or German. No, our linguistics. We've forgotten how to use verbs. We don't think of being as a verb. We think of human being, as an object, and not human being. We think of thing as a thing, not as a thing. No, the problem is that language makes us think that there is something called genuine language that you can strive towards. If genuine knowledge is the knowledge of being, or the knowledge of reason, which is no thing at all, then striving towards it as if it were something will not help. So the problem is not with the problem is not with the way we're doing it per se. The problem is that we're trying to do it in a sort of way, and we think that any way we pick is the way. In a very Taoist sense, later Heidegger very much says that, it's the way that is no way, kind of, right? That's the way. Being is that which is no being. It's not any one being. It's not any one thing. But if you know the etymology of the word thing, for example, the Ding from German, Old German, the thing used to be a social justice sort of gathering. Like if someone in like the Germanic Norse tribes, if someone stole someone's goat, or murdered their brother, or whatever, some sort of injustice was done, you would call a thing. And the thing would be the entire tribe, the entire community, the entire clan, whatever have you, would come together and sort of decide in the presence of the chief, and the chief would be the ultimate arbiter. That is very roughly can be traced to the origin of the modern saying, don't make it a thing. because it's only a thing when people agree that it is a thing. That is why I said earlier, beings is that which lets things be as things. Look, the things are out there in space. We don't know what. We don't even know what we don't know. We know there's some kind of things. We know there's some kind of things we don't know. And then we don't even know what kind of things we don't know. As and when we start, hey, Future Homestead, welcome. As and when our Hubble and James Webb and like future telescopes get better and we get better at seeing further and further things, they become real to us. But literally until their light reaches us, we cannot tell that they're real. The cosmic sort of horizon, right? The observable universe is said to be about 93 billion light years wide. That's a pretty solid horizon, because the light from beyond that is never going to reach us, because that part of the universe is moving faster than the light from those stars and that those galaxies is traveling to us. So it's trying to come, but the road keeps on getting longer. Those things will never be things to us. They will be things over there somewhere to those people, if there are people there. We're just imagining if they will even be things, but until the light from them can even come to us and reach us and give us this information that, hey, I exist, those things. Oh yeah, no, and you Parmenides and Heraclitus, like Heidegger really brings those paradoxes together to say that they're not saying different things; they're saying the same thing. And it's stupid that the history of philosophy has thought that these people were saying opposite things. Like, I cannot tell you how much I don't agree with Heidegger about the Nazi thing at all, but I do agree with Heidegger that the history of philosophy has been just a history of mistakes, mostly. Oh no, you're not late at all. We started 45 minutes ago. I'm gonna go home for a bit. I haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. I've just been answering like questions and stuff. No, but so my point was originally that so if you want to understand Heidegger better, one thing is to understand that our language has been conditioned pretty badly, and we need to uncondition it and unlearn. So it's you want to understand the hyphens and why he capitalizes things, why he writes in the way he does. It's very specific. Do not read Heidegger like you're reading an analytic philosopher. Do not read Heidegger maybe like, yeah, Hegel. People won't find Heidegger maybe that difficult. They might find him annoying though, but his entire point is that he wants to show us the limits of language, and through the limits of language, the limits of thinking. And I have a sort of pet theory that the famous hyphens that he uses, serve three purposes, based on the scholars that I've read. One, that they're grammatical. They serve as like a grammatical, like, to show that, hey, this is a different way to use this word, right? Like when I showed you um, earlier up in the chat, you can see it showed you properties or proposition. He uses it like that to show that, hey, look, you didn't realize this about this word, right? Before this. So he uses that, and he uses it as a performative, right? To really make you think about what he is saying there. Why is he putting that there? And lastly, he uses it as a connective to sort of put together things that don't belong together, especially opposites like positive and negative, because he sort of uses it as a unity. And so my pet theory is that the word that he is looking for in his entire career, that one word that says being, but doesn't in a way that being becomes one thing that can be referred to, right? That says no thing at all, no individual thing at all, but that which gives thingness to all things. What is this word? And my kind of pet theory is that I don't think that's a word at all, right? I think it was right under his nose and he missed it. I think his hyphen is a way of saying being. Um, and I'm not going to say any more on that because I'm writing a paper on that, so I'm going to write about that. But I wanted to go over again. The book is called Engaging Heidegger by Richard Capobianco. It's a little bit of an advanced book. I would suggest you read some Heidegger before, but what it does have is some a table of the names that Heidegger uses for being. Right? He uses. So let's start with being, capital B EING / BEYNG. He later uses a Y because he's like, when you say being, people think it's a being, so I want to put a Y to make sure that this is like, kind of like capital G God. In German, it's called das Sein or das Sein with the Y, Sein. Being itself, right? That's also being itself is a difficulty in saying being, right? Like you're trying to say what being, but being is the selfhood of all things. It's the lampness of the lamp. It is that which gives the lampness of the lamp, that which gives the sunglasses their sunglassesness, that which gives the sun its sunness, that because of which the sun is the sun. But then if you say being itself, what gives being its selfness, its beingness? And then that's it. Then you're thinking of being as a individual being. And Heidegger's like, that's problematic, right? So being itself is a problematic name. But it's like we're trying our best to say no thing at all. So, but we've been trained in a language that tells us that the more you say about things, the better we understand them. And here we are trying to say things about a subject which evades all saying. So saying being itself is already actually what do I have my copy of Beyond Good and Evil here? No. No, Nietzsche calls it in Beyond Good and Evil. He says that. Oh yeah, here it is. In The Prejudice of the Philosophers, he says that the thing in itself, right? This where'd it go? Footnote number 23. 1921. Oh yeah, the thing in itself is contradictio adjecto. Right? Contradictio in adjecto. Contradictio we all know, like we know contradictio and ad absurdum and all of that. Contradictio in adjecto. I'm going to type it in the chat. Adjecto. Ad means next to. Right? Jecto comes from Latin. Iacto means to throw. So an adjective is that which is thrown next to the noun. So contradictio in adjecto is the contradiction between the noun and the adjective, which is next to it, which means thing in itself for Nietzsche is contradictory because how can the thing be in itself? And therefore, being itself is contradictory for Heidegger in the same way. But he still says, like, you can't help but use it sometimes. It's not the right way to use it. Also, adjecto, now think of subjecto thrown below, objecto thrown against, interjecto thrown in between, injecto thrown in, ejecto thrown up or out. Abjecto, out, thrown out of. E is up. Like say abject poverty. It's so complete, like so powerful, like so poor, like out of the norm, out of the category. Abjecto. And Heidegger is very, very conscious to stress on these kind of etymology. Don't ever think of subjective and objective ever again as the way that we use it in the regular way. Subjective thinking, objective thinking, relativism, fuck all that. No. Subjectum is that which is thrown under. We are under the things that exist across or above us, that are against us. The object is that which stands against the subject. The TV is against me. Right? So being in itself, das Sein selbst. And I apologize for my German. I just barely passed my German class in undergrad. Being and such. Everything that isn't self. Self is everything that is not. I feel you. I hate the modern ambiguities between subject, right? Oh yeah, Heidegger even asks about ambiguity. We don't even understand what ambiguity means. We think ambiguous means unsure. No. Ambiguity doesn't mean unsure. Ambiguous means can go both ways. Like contiguous means goes together. Contiguous, contradiction. Ambi means both sides. Guous means going both ways. Ambiguity is not something which is unsure, where it can go this way or that way, right? Ambiguity is when you can do both things. Ambidextrous is similar, right? Like amphibian, yep, amphitheater. So Heidegger says being as such. But again, he's saying when you say being as such, that's still our mind, like our language resisting that urge, still trying to be like, no, but I know it's not a thing, but I can't help but think of it as some sort of thing, and it's struggling. Being as being, that's the next. Being, as God, as whatever you want to call it, the infinity. He's like, that's still, to use a word. But also being is the nothing, right? Das Nichts, the no thing. And it is the same, das Selb, the same. It's the same what? Like I said, the same thing? It's not a thing. It's that because of which all things get their thingness. So it is the same. It is the finite temporal spatial, right? Being is not finite. Being is that which gives finitude to beings, right? So this is the sentence I'm reading reads like this. I'm typing it. Being is the finite temporal spatial unconcealing sorry, being is the temporal, is the finite, and uh the name sounds familiar. Lewandowski, SDS. Might be after my time, I'm not sure. Temper. Yeah, when I was at doing STS, the chair of the program was Andrew Eade, and Nathan Kowalski was there, but I don't remember any other people really in the program. There was like barely anyone at STS then. I don't know what's happened since then. That was 2014 or 2014 to 2016. Um, Temporal spatial appearing of. Oh yeah, it's definitely a cool program. It's super unique. STS is Science, Technology, and Society. That's where I did my undergrad in the University of Alberta in Canada. It's super unique. Great program. Um, but so this is the sentence I'm talking about from Capobianco. Being is the finite negative temporal spatial appearing of beings in their beingness. No, I'm not Canadian. I'm Indian. I just been around the world. Um, so um, finite negative, right? Here now. Usually, how we read this sentence would be instead of being, if you looked at another, said just x is the finite negative temporal spatial appearing of beings in their beingness. You'd say, oh yeah, so x is this thing which is finite negative and temporal spatial, and it is the appearing of beings in their beingness. No, being is the appearing of beings in their beingness. It is the process of beings appearing as beings, as, and we see them either as, we can either represent those as substances, as processes, whatever, monads, eidos, ousia, or whatever you, however it has been represented throughout the history of philosophy, right? That we see their beingness and we represent them in different ways. But that beingness itself is positive because we can see it. We can make, we can take positions on it. We can posit things about it. We can make propositions about it. We can look at that beingness and say that, okay, it appears to be large or small or heavy or light or red or blue or a bird or a plane or Superman or whatever. And that beingness of that being that we can see, whether we're, if we're a visually important, a culture that puts a lot of importance on visual, then we will, the beingness will be more about phenomenal seeing, right? If we're a more tactile culture, then what we understand from that object might be more from what we understand by touching it. If we're a more oral culture, then we may not pay attention to what that object really looks like or feels like, but what it sounds like, what sounds it makes. Those are all different ways of interpreting or representing that beingness. But the point is that that beingness, of that, the beings appear in their beingness, they have that beingness, and the beingness is what we can see, we can posit, we can measure, is what has extension in space. It is what endures in time, right? So, and it is finite, right? It has finitude. All the things that exist around us came into being at some point, and whether naturally or artificially, given some amount of time, will die out, will decay, will disintegrate, not have this same form, right? Like these sunglasses are already not what they used to be, because these used to be those like nice, the ones you can put on and they can like, you can hear them like without, like they got headphone like things, audio sensors here, whatever. And then I spilled water on them. Now the audio thing doesn't work, and now they're regular sunglasses. They're already not complete. Ivan Neo, um, mathematical infinities. I will talk about that in a second. I was coming to that. Thank you for coming here. Um, I was talking about some physics earlier. Um, so uh, these are um, these beings that appear, like I said, they have extension in space, they have endurance in time, right? So they have a they exist in space and time. They have the character of existing in space and time, of appearing in space and time. They're also finite, they have finitude, and they can be posited of or have position. But all of this is possible because being is that which itself is infinite, right? So it is negative, it is temporality and spatiality itself, right? But when the infinite, the negative, the temporality, and the spatiality come together as in a sort of the process of coming together as to how do I put this? Being is the infinity from which beings, little b beings, get defined, right? It's the infinity from which little finite pieces are cut off, in a sense, to make individual beings. But being itself is not finite. It is what gives finitude. It is no thing at all. That's why it is not positive. You can't make positive statements about it. You can't take positions on it. You can't make propositions about it. It is not any object in space or time, in so much as it is space and time. It is spatiality and temporality in the framework of which objects appear, right? So that is like a very basic definition of not even definition, it's a description, right? The reason I don't like to use the word definition, this is again a Heideggerian reason, is because definition is a definitude. It is a defining. It is a making finite from a infinity, a cutting off. It is, and this is also his point, is that when we decide, we cut off, right? Patricide, cutting off. Side doesn't mean kill. Side means cut. When we decise, right? Excise. When we make a decision, we cut something off from both ends. We say, okay, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing this, that's what I'm doing. So when you define something, you say, it's not this, it's not that, it's this exact thing. That works for things, but that doesn't work for being. So you can't define being. You try to define it, you make it into a thing. Now, coming to mathematical infinities, it is infinite because all possibility Uh, yes. So being would be possibility in its most like unquantifiable sense, like pure possibility, not in any sense determinable possibility, that it cannot really become probability, because as soon as possibility becomes probability, it becomes something that you can make propositions about. It's a probability already, right? But on the point of mathematical infinities, what I was thinking is, I mean, we know the regular infinity that we all talk of, on the countable infinity, which exists at the end of the um, the number system, the number line, right? You got zero in the middle, plus one, two, three, four, five, all the way is plus infinity, and then minus one, two, three, four, all the way is negative infinity. Is being infinite because all possibility is infinite? Ivan, being is. Infinity is. All possibility is, right? All possibility is. What is all possibility other than being? If possibility is, if all possibility is the um, combined set of all possible existences, then being is all possibility. And if it is these all possibility is an infinite set, then being is, yes, by definition, in that sense. But it's not definition because it's tautological. You're not really defining anything. It's kind of, but you are absolutely right, right? In the sense that, let me illustrate to you what I was saying. That, so you have countable infinity, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, positive infinity on one end, and negative 1, 2, 3, 4, and negative infinity on the other. This infinity is countable. It is, in this sense of Heidegger, ontic. You can say things about it, that it is that side of 0. Negative infinity is that side of 0. That negative infinity is larger than all other integers. That or is larger than all smaller than all negative integers. And positive infinity is larger than all integers. You can make these comments about it. Now, mathematicians also know of a second level of infinity, and then there are more, but second level is kind of confounding enough for us, which is uncountable infinity. And uncountable infinity does not exist outside the number system. It exists within the number system. It exists between every integer. It exists between 0 and 1, and it exists between the gap between 0 and 1, and between the gap between the gap between the gap. It is Zeno's paradox the other way around. It is what comes after 0. 0.00000000000. You can keep going. It keeps going. You can't put the 1. That's how big it is, but it's also the smallest number. It's literally the smallest number because it is what is after 0. And it exists in every discrete interval. 0 to 1, right? Then between 1 to 2, you have 1.00000, right? Wherever that infinite zeros end, you put the 1, then you start infinite number of zeros, 2, infinite number of zeros, all the way until 9, infinite number of zeros, then the infinity minus 1, 1. But this is an infinity which is both infinitely big and infinitely small. This is why I think it is a good example of being, because for Heidegger, being is that which is beyond contradictions. Why? Because it is not a thing, because no contradictory propositions can even be made about it. So while you can make you can make propositions about plus infinity and minus infinity on the countable level and talk about them as things, give them a fancy symbol, you can't even name uncountable infinity. It's like being. You call it uncountable infinity. And that's exactly why Heidegger calls being all these negative kind of names. Aletheia, unconcealing. Right? Because he says it is the unsayable, unhearable, uh, you know, unspeakable, untouchable, but that because of which all things can be said, spoken of, and exist. Now, while I'm on this path of the uncountable infinity between 0 and 1, I wanted to talk about another thing that was that I love. This is another book, Heidegger and the Greeks by Drew Hyland. Very good book. The first essay of it is called and you can see, first of all came Chaos by Drew Hyland, and it talks about Hesiod's the cosmogony, right? First of all, chaos came to be, right? But then afterward, broad-breasted earth, a secure dwelling place forever for all, and misty Tartara in her depths, under the wide ground, and Eros, who handsomest amongst the deathless gods, a looser of limbs, in all gods and all human beings, overpower in their breasts, in their intelligence and careful planning. And from chaos came to be both Erebos and dark night, and from night in turn came to be both aether and day. Chaos came to be first. Right? Now, Hyland says, and this is what I say again, and I'm going to be blunt about it. Fuck modern language. Fuck the modern way we use language, because it fucks with us. He has to be scholarly because he's writing a book and all that, and I have to do that when I'm writing a paper too, but I can say it here. If we take Hesiod's chaos in the modern English sense of the word, the scientific, the mathematical, fuck all those senses of the word. And I mean fuck in the sense of like, okay, fine, Husserlian bracketing, if you won't, people are going to get angry about that. Bracket the modern usage of language for a second. If we use chaos in the modern English sense of the word, first of all, there was an unintelligible, undifferentiated, unarticulable condition. Perhaps a prefiguration of the now well-known primal soup chaos, right? We use that idea, primal soup. Out of that primal mess, ever so gradually developed an intelligible, identifiable cosmos. From chaos to cosmos. We don't understand this. We think cosmos means universe. This is the dumbest thing. People think cosmos means universe. No, it doesn't. Cosmos means well-ordered. Cosm, macrocosm, microcosm. Microcosm means small, well-ordered. Macrocosm means large, well-ordered. It doesn't mean small world and big world. World itself means well-ordered. It has well-ordered presupposition into world. World is never chaotic. What would you propose to do in lieu of using language in the modern sense? Merleau-Ponty and indeed Heidegger's phenomenology shows that a complete reduction is not possible. Likewise, we cannot escape modern day. Yeah, no, we start unconditioning. Start teaching people that there are multiple ways of using words, and refuse to tie down words to one meaning. And if people are like, oh, why do you speak poetically? Tell them they're boring fucks. That they want to stick to categorical language where one thing is only one thing and one thing must be one thing. And if that one thing doesn't means another thing and it's contradictory, it annoys them in their butt. No. Let language be meaningless and be meaningful. So what? The Greeks did perfectly fine having colorful, poetic language where words meant multiple things. Logos meant 35 different things. You know what? Actually, you said in lieu, whatever the fuck. Look at the fuck. I would love to have you on here. I just love. Fuck is the most polysemic word in the English language. We use it for, and this is you can go online. There's like an Osho clip about it, an old Osho clip where he talks about, there's so many ways that we use the word fuck. We use it for obviously as a sexual term, as a expletive, exasperation. We use it for agreeing, for disagreeing. We use it to tell people to get lost. And we're okay with it. We're okay with it. Why? Why? Because the world wants us to be scientific and categorical and one way about certain things, that words must mean one thing and one thing only. Right? Oh, it's horrible for science. It's great for understanding. It's horrible for philosophy if the goal of philosophy is to be done like science, but I don't think that that's the goal for philosophy at all. Is there a connection between Heidegger's stuff on idle talk? Yes. You all should read Heidegger. Um, um, idle talk is Heidegger's talking more of an attunement. He's talking more of an attunement. My point is that philosophy is an arts project. Philosophy is not a science, and philosophy should not be a science. Philosophy is the uncertainty of the world. Philosophy for me is primarily about no thing at all. Science is about things. Scientia means it is art and science, but neither. I know you find this confusing, but my point is that science is scientia, knowing the things. Philosophy has always been beyond what the things are. It should not be scientific. It should not be scientific. Otherwise, again, I'm saying that this is why we should pay attention to words. Scientists don't even know what they're talking about when they use the word science, because you've forgotten where the term science comes from. Scientia means knowing the things. And Heidegger says, yeah, science wants to know nothing about the nothing, because the nothing is what strikes terror in the hearts of science. It's where the Big Bang ends. It's where the wave function and the particle can't be decided. It's where the questions of evolution can't be answered. It's where the things go away, and science can't do anything about it, because science is ultimately calculating the right categories and putting things in the right pigeonholes. Very, very broadly construed. As much as all art is taking a brush and painting strokes, including sculpture. Philosophy should not be like science. It should not be like art either. If the way that we think of art today is that art is becoming scientific, look at music. It's become all digital and programmed. Look at art. It's become all. There is nothing to the. No, that is true. No, you're absolutely right, right? There is no thing to the nothing, that you can't really talk about it or experience it. And my point about, like, the famous Heideggerian line that Luminance Bloom and I were talking about, the nothing nots. And famously, the logical positivist Carnap came out against that and said that that's a stupid, meaningless sentence. It's like, no. It's not meaningless. It means nothing. But there's a difference between means nothing and meaningless. Meaningless, if you think meaningless is the same as means nothing, that means your worldview ends with things. That things are all there are, and there is nothing beyond the things the way that they appear, that there's nothing beyond the appearance of things, which is either you're a monist or a nihilist, or you slide that way. Heidegger's point is that no, meaningless means you can't say that it is true or false. Okay, I agree with that. It is meaningless then. You can't say about being that it is true or false. You can't say about the nothing nots whether it is true or false. But it also means nothing. And that is a contradiction that logical positivists couldn't handle. That is a contradiction that Wittgenstein loved, though. Wittgenstein was like, I understand what Heidegger meant. I think I understand what Heidegger meant. If I can pull out my Wittgenstein and Heidegger text here. Sorry, my books are all over the place. I'm in the middle of a research project. Yes. Um, Wittgenstein briefly considered what we might do if we want to do justice to a proposition like the nothing nots. Um, Commenting on the passage, Hacker suggests that for Wittgenstein, this task will be achieved by freeing someone who is inclined to advance such propositions from their confusion. In particular, he suggests that Wittgenstein tries to imagine what misconceived picture underlies Heidegger's nonsense, as Carnap puts it. The problem is that Heidegger himself is pointing this out. Heidegger is saying that the fact that a sentence like the nothing nots can lead us into this kind of debate when you're saying it means nothing and it is meaningless, but clearly it means, well, not something, but it has some meaning because it's getting Carnap up in a bunch. Heidegger is pointing out this. His entire career has been pointing out this difficulty. And Wittgenstein gets it. Wittgenstein, people, they're like, I like Wittgenstein, but I don't like Heidegger. Then I don't know if you read Wittgenstein or Heidegger properly. Because a lot of the time they're saying the same in their own different ways. There is nothing to say and no insight to be gained. I would be wrong. I would disagree. There's nothing to say. I would agree on that. There is no thing to say. No insight to be gained. It's okay. I'll just let science answer the question of what happens before the Big Bang. How long should I wait? I mean, we've been here an hour and a half. How long do you think science is going to take to come to a conclusive answer about what happened before the Big Bang? Or are they going to stick to, oh, that's where time and space began. You can't really ask that question, so you can't really go beyond that. There's no insight to be gained from the Big Bang theory. I can say that. No. Back to the Future Homestead. There's always insight to be gained. In fact, there is no insight to be gained from things. It's okay if you want to say that science cannot answer all questions, but it's not like you are answering the question on gaining insight on what we do not know. Are we not? Because what you said about time and space earlier, I agreed about. And what you said about the infinities, I showed you that is a scientific mathematical issue. If it is art, the point may not be the point of philosophy has never been to get answers. That's the scientific problem. That's the scientific problematization of a mystery, if we're to say, quote Gabriel Marcel. Everything is not a problem to be solved. Existence is not a problem to be solved. Existence is a mystery to be lived. Science cannot answer all the questions because science is always inventing more questions than it can answer, because everything is a question. Yes, so for science, everything is a question. When it runs out of things, it runs into something it cannot question. And that's when science turns into sort of a pernicious scientism, where if it's not a problem, then it's meaningless, and there's no insight to be gained from it because it's not a problem to be solved. No, it's a problem that science can't solve. Buddhism solved this problem in 600 BC. The same kind of insight that the Greeks had in different ways were validated later by Newton and later even by Einstein. What do I mean? that there were people back in 700 BC saying that things aren't really things; they're all processes. It's all there's no solid material. And we come to the 20th century, and that's what we find out. Were they right? Did they know? No, they didn't know. They didn't know. It was the invention of science that convinced us that we know things. But then 300 years later, science itself was like, oh, fuck, we don't know anything. Well, no. By your name itself, science, your goal is to know things, scientia. You just ran into the limits of things and now your method is useless. So what? So get in line. Maybe existence isn't the domain of science to solve. What exists in existence, existence, are science's domain. But science should stick to its lane and stick to the existence. And let art or literature solve the problem of the how and the why instead of the what. Because science is limited to what. The problem is we're not answering the question. The problem is it's not a question that needs to be answered. It's a question that really needs to be raised. And if it's a question that is raised in the right way, the only answer you can give to it is abject silence, because it will stun you. That's how wise and stupid that real question is. And that question, Leibniz raised it years ago. Why are there things instead of nothing at all? Science hasn't come anywhere close to answering that question. Heidegger has, actually. So science can suck it. Empirical science. I used to be a scientist. I used to be an astrophysics guy and a climate science guy before I came to this path. It's only because that question cannot be answered. No. You're wrong. That question cannot be answered because we have not asked it properly yet. Why are there things instead of no thing at all? Because it's a grammatical answer. Hang on, I'm gonna have to type it. All right, so I wrote it down, right? Why are there things instead of nothing at all? That's the question. Well, but are is being, right? Being is ising. So the question then becomes, why are things here instead of nothing at all? But if you look at what that says, being there is why there are things at all. Being there is Dasein. It's the emptiness, the clearing where things can exist, right? If you think of it in the Einsteinian way, space and time have to be an open cylinder or a container in which matter can exist, and matter and energy can exist. And that matter and energy warps that space-time, and that warped space-time makes matter and energy go in circles or ellipses, in curved paths, right? So Heidegger takes this in a way that he's saying, look, it's not that things don't exist. or they never existed, like substances, right? Like copper, iron, hydrogen, helium. Those have existed since whenever you want to call it the Big Bang Theory, 13.8 billion years. Sure, they've existed since then or before or whatever. And they will continue to exist as per the leading theories of our science say. Granted, not denying that. But the question is, why are there things? Now, as far as we know, as far as humans, as far as we know, things only exist as these things or those things in our domain. Hydrogen is hydrogen as far as we call it hydrogen. Another species might call it something else. Will it be the same molecule, the same structure? Sure. But until this species evolves to a point where it can differentiate between the things around it as different things and give it names and designations and make concepts of it in their memory, the things don't exist. They just exist as raw data, not as resolved entities. So why is there something instead of nothing is more a question for Heidegger, not about any surface level question like physics or cosmology or anything like that, but what goes beyond. Why do there exist definite, delimited things and not indeterminate chaos? You could think of it in the sense of like, why is the cosmos cosmic? Why is there this is why I say science runs out, because science only thinks of this question as one tonality. Science only thinks of this question as a one. Science needs to be more artistic. Science needs to be more poetic. The problem is that scientists today are just scientific. They're mere scientists. Scientists need to be more like, let's say, Einstein, Bohr, Heisenberg. I'm not saying all scientists are like that. I'm saying the scientists who represent science are mostly like that. Scientists I worked with were mostly like that. But the point is, science is monosemic. It does one word has one meaning. It's one category because it needs efficiency, like Ivan said earlier. And he's right. If you want things to be efficient, to be progressive, if you want things to be to work, you need to have one meaning, one word, one meaning, one category. Everything is fixed, one to one. But that doesn't apply necessarily to that which is beyond all things, right? So there are multiple ways of reading this. You could read, why are there things instead of nothing at all? You could read it in an evolutionary sense. When or why or how did life develop a sense of order or sense of ordering, right? The world around us has always been differentiated. How did life come to be like, okay, I'm going to start grouping these together as conscious beings? We were like, okay, this is food. This is not food. These are my people, these are not my people. This is friend and this is enemy. Basic grouping, and then further categorizing. Because we don't categorize like that. We don't categorize like, oh yeah, all plants. No, we go binary, 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 binary branching, right? All the way down. So you can ask it in an evolutionary sense. When did our concept of entities as a psychological human concept come in? Whatever biological, sociological factors that gave rise to that evolution could then answer the question of why are there things at all instead of nothing. Another could be a cosmological reason, could be something like certain conditions at the beginning of our universe worked out in certain ways that our universe evolved. There could be another parallel universe where it's, it just never evolved past helium, and it's just all the entire universe is just helium everywhere. There'd be no things, because if everything is helium, you couldn't differentiate between one helium atom and the other, and everything is just the same. It's monadic. So if all the things were the same, how would that be different from nothing? How we evolved to discriminate is it? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying when you say that it is a scientific question, science acts in its typical closed way. I am saying that the question of Leibniz is much more deep rooted. And it has, in fact, influenced evolutionary thinking. You think what science just floats in the air? Leibniz was not important in the development of science? What are you talking about? Leibniz helped develop calculus, one of the basic fundamentals of any evolutionary understanding of any evolution of any system. My point is, you're trying to differentiate scientific question from philosophical question, but I'm saying that that's what scientists do, and philosophy should not be done that way. I agree that there are some questions that need to be solved scientifically. But they're not disconnected from the philosophical question. And my other point is that if science got its head out of its categorical ass, it might be able to ask questions in a different way. Like it had to when the quantum revolution happened. Like Bohr and Einstein had to have debates about determinism and probabilism. Like they had to have debates about whether there's a collapse or not. I'm saying that those two questions, why are those two different? My point is, Ivan, is that when you say that the why there is something rather than nothing question cannot be answered scientifically, I'm saying that because from the scientific perspective, it is only thinking of that question as a physical question, because science only thinks in one sense at a time. I am saying that if science was to open its eyes and read the question in a different tonality, you might find that the good scientific answer for how we came to discriminate is also based on some sort of unscientific backing. Not unscientific, ascientific, like a Kuhnian idea. And I'm not disagreeing that how we came to discriminate is a scientific question to be answered. Yeah, it's definitely a scientific question to be answered. Right? What I am saying is that there are more than one valid sense in which the question, why is there something rather than nothing, can be asked. Science asks it in the physical sense, says, oh, but that's not a question for us to answer, and then rejects it. It doesn't see that how we came to discriminate raw data into, or resolve raw data into good resolution is also is the same kind of question. Because the good scientific answer, Ivan, that you're talking about runs out at the level of things, again, the same way the best scientific answer does. Because again, yes, it boils down to why is there something rather than nothing. So yes, we have a good scientific answer for how we came to discriminate. But if I question that good scientific answer, it boils down to why is there something other than nothing? And that question cannot be answered scientifically. I have no problem with science. I just think science should stay in its lane and learn a little bit from the arts. Yeah, why is there multiplicity other than oneness? We can ask that in a cosmic way. Yeah, why are there multiplicities instead of oneness? No, but you're right. Like, why is there multiplicity instead of oneness? Well, one question is, we can ask that question because we see multiplicity and we imagine there could be an opposite of it, which is oneness, and we're like, why isn't it this other than the other? But then the other question is, why do we have a concept of multiplicity in the first place? A dualist would say, well, there's multiple things outside, so you have a concept of multiplicity. No, that's circular logic. Ivan, the question of being is not answered. If you're looking for an answer to the question of being, you're already asking it in the wrong way. You're under the assumption that every question needs to be answered and that the essence of a question is it's presupposing an answer. No, the essence of a question that can be asked. Science presumes that every question must be answered, and it only deigns to, even feigns to ask those questions which can possibly be answered. Philosophy asks the questions which cannot even be answered, which you are even trying to ask. Right, exactly. And the answer would be another something. An answer. Yes, exactly. It would be an answer. And then everyone with an answer would argue which one is the answer. There is no answer. Because the question of being is not a question. The question of being is that which makes us question. It is the very impulse of questioning that leads us to question physically, biologically, sociologically, chemically, philosophically, poetically, artistically, mathematically, logically, stupidly, wisely, whatever. What is that impulse? Even Descartes couldn't answer that because he presupposed that the impulse is an I, but the I is something that impulse creates to make sense of the world around it. We get a name when we're born, and that's a tether we hold on to. If we didn't get a name when we were born, can you imagine how insane our lives would be? We wouldn't know who I was. If you ask me who I am, I'll say I am PJ, I am Empty Buddha. Okay, fine. I ask you who you are, you say I am Ivan. But those are the names that we attached ourselves to and got conditioned to since we were kids, babies. If we weren't given those names, we wouldn't have an answer to who am I. It would be exact, because why? Because there is no thing that I refers to. I is not a thing. You are the process. You are this existing, this process of existing that came into being and then went. The conclusion that you cannot answer why is there something other than nothing, because any answer would be something, has been along in analytic philosophy for a long time. No, but that's not what Heidegger is saying. Heidegger is saying that that is true, but that's not a reason to give up. Analytic philosophy gives up there. Analytic philosophy is like, oh yeah, there will be some things, so there's no way to answer it. So okay, so it's a big problem. Okay, fine. Heidegger's like, no, no, come on, you cowards. Philosophers have been loser, scholar, nerds for a long time enough. Philosophers need to be the monks of all that we were. Go into a mountain and meditate and do some magic substances until you see reality, not sit in a enclosed offices of cement and glass and write on whiteboards. That's not wisdom, that's intelligence. That's knowledge. I don't want knowledge. Seems like a really good reason to give up, right? But then if everything exists for a reason, everything can be given up for a reason. But if it is no thing, then no reason to give it up would be good enough. I can be analytic about this as long as you like, Ivan. I came from an analytic background. Like my point is that analytic philosophy is too scientific, and it gave up because it was too scientific, because it's scared of the nothing, afraid of the nothing. The nothing knocks, analytic philosophy shits its pants when it comes across the nothing. Heidegger wants someone like Nietzsche who's like not afraid to go forth into the nothing. Right? I don't even take this insight from Heidegger. I get this insight from Buddhism. Oh hey, what's up? Welcome. You're on the India time zone, so thanks for being here. I get my insight from Buddhism. I just see Heidegger, well, not recycling, but coming to that kind of insight himself independently without plagiarizing or stealing anything from the East necessarily. So I respect that. I see his point is that no, the West had it right a long time ago, just like the East did. And then the West lost its way because progress and use became so important that we got myopic about it. We only saw the things, and we missed the forest for the trees. We couldn't see what being was. We were so entranced by the beings around us, by what is present and not what is responsible for their presencing. Oh yeah, I hate. Oh yeah, thank you. I hate Lawrence Krauss. Lawrence Krauss is. Oh. Yeah, no, yeah. He's the quantum vacuum is not nothing. That's what I'm saying. So the quantum vacuum is not nothing. The quantum vacuum is no thing. So this is a differentiation I want to make, and I make it again and again. Right? The nothing is void. The nothing is like black hole void. Like nothing happens. Not even quantum vacuum. The no thing is different. The no thing is not thing. It is not nothing. The no thing is intermediate. Actually, like the chaos thing that we talked about, it is unintelligible, undifferentiated, unarticulated condition that and isn't that what the quantum vacuum in a sense is? Pretty well understood doesn't mean it's completely understood. the quantum vacuum is not nothing. I agree. The quantum vacuum is um, as far as I understand it, uh, pre. mm, okay, let me see if I'm getting this right. Right, what we're talking about when we say quantum vacuum is the primordial state, so to speak, before the existence of either quantum or classical entities. Is that what you would say is quantum vacuum? Like the kind of Planck state ground energy from which positron antipositron or electron positron pairs can come out as quantum fluctuations and then go back, because that's what I was thinking when you said quantum vacuum, because I see that as all possibility. I should look up some like visualizations for this. I don't mean anything at all like the no. uh what I'm saying is that, look at the term quantum, right? First of all, the way that we use quantum is just fucked up. Quantum came from Niels Bohr's saying that light and particles, and it can only be, and Einstein can only be transmitted, absorbed, or emitted in quanta, in specific packets, in measurable, quantifiable sizes, specific sizes. But the understanding of quantum mechanics led to very unquantifiable phenomenon. Oh, I know. Studied things. Um, I had about 3 years of astrophysics before I transferred to history and philosophy of science, and I finished off, and then finished that and went to climate science, and then I'm here. Uh, I'm always spitting, man. This is why I decided to just start this. Yeah, a little bit from the stem. Um, Actually, I'm not a doctor yet, so call me Mister all you want. I'm still like 3 years from 3 to 4 years from finishing my PhD. So thank you for that, Ivan. But I am not. I am very much still a graduate student. I just have a big mouth. Yes, I will do a climate. We'll do a climate stream another whole other time. And climate thing is whole. Um, I haven't touched on that in a little. Like I haven't studied that in a little bit. So I'll have to sort of get back into that stuff. I haven't talked studied that in like a few years. But no, Ivan, sorry. What I was saying is that even the name, this is one of my point, one of the reasons why I really like Heidegger. Leave alone all the esoteric and weird stuff. Is I like why the way Heidegger uses language. I think maybe an hour. I'm just chilling. Yeah. Hop on. I can show you some of the stuff about rationalism and uh, those things. I sent you the link on Twitter. Um, um, no, what was I talking about? The Oh yeah, Ivan, I'd love to have you on for quantum mechanics. Just we'll definitely do it. I haven't talked to like a lot of people I talk to are mostly like pure philosophers, who talk Hegel and Heidegger, and uh, they don't really know. And that's one of my problems with, like, say, ancient and medieval philosophers who haven't really talked to the science, who haven't really like read on like the sciences, and so their religious philosophy is still stuck in substance monism or substance dualism and things like that. And it's like at that point you're not really doing philosophy, you're just kind of doing like history, right? Like, no challenge, well, where's the sort of intellectual challenge that comes from being like, holy shit, we were wrong. um so okay, so Zizek, yeah, Zizek always talking, but Zizek is Zizek. I'm talking about like a lot of usual general philosophers um, are not really well versed about the sciences, and their idea of the sciences comes from like what the person they were reading was science was at the time. So like if you have a Leibnizian, then they're more so focused on Cartesian, Leibnizian, Newtonian um, kind of worldviews that it becomes yeah, exactly, when when their philosophy gets contradicted by a modern counterexample in physics, it's like, what do you do, right? And like a great example is like, so if you've read like one of the philosophers I do want to really cover on here is on my stream is Paul Feyerabend, Against Method, which is it's like one of my favorite philosophers of science. And he has a story about Galileo where he's like, look, we all know the story that Galileo got sent to house arrest and for speaking against the church, and but not a lot of people understand how he did it. Um, he didn't go to the church or the pope or whoever and say, look, here's the data, here's the figures, here's the science and the facts, and facts don't care about your feelings, and you should believe in the science. No, he knew that was not going to work. That's not going to work, not with the church. So Galileo goes to the church and he says, okay, look, I loved Aristotle. Great guy. Smart dude. You guys love Aristotle. You built your whole church on him. You're burning people to stake who says that, Aristotle was wrong. What I'm saying is, if Aristotle was as smart as a person as you say he was, and I say he was, and we both agree he was smart, so we're on the same side here. And if I showed him my data today, would would he agree? Or would he be stubborn and be like, no, I was right? If he was as wise and smart as you say he was, and he was like such a great scientist, then he would agree with the data. Unfortunately, that didn't work either. Like, he still got put in, but it's a better strategy, I feel, to attack not attack, or at least defend against anti-science, right? People think sometimes I'm anti-science. I'm not anti-science. I just think science needs a better strategy. You can't scream at the anti-science people. Neither does science taking the position of, oh yeah, I'm the only way that there is, and if I can't answer any question, the question has no point. That's not problematic at all, is it? Science has to, like I said, stay in its lane and understand that it is useful. But the way I see it, science is only useful. And if your worldview ends with use, then I kind of feel sorry for you, that that everything has a utility, and beyond utility, there is nothing else in the world. That's sad to me. And it makes me feel like I want to play you a song on a guitar, and like make you tea or something. That reminds me, my tea got cold while I was yapping away. wait, AG 1337. Uh, Especially since the whole attack on positivism and yeah, no, for sure that whole positivism was definitely inspired by Einsteinian physics and relativistic physics, quantum physics. Um, in fact, all of those logical positivists were neo-Kantians, and Einstein himself was a little bit of a neo-Kantian. But his relativist theory of relativity led Carnap and the others to switch from neo-Kantianism to logical positivism. Um, Reminded me of the new program of the Frankfurt. Yeah, right. Yeah, the Frankfurt School is very much in that sort of like spirit. Um, so um, yeah, so just to get back to Heidegger for a second. Uh, One second again. Why can't that link open? Oh man, yeah, that's hilarious, right? Because like the Pope was his friend. The story goes that Galileo wanted to write a book about how the church was wrong and Copernicus was right, but he couldn't. And then the person who became the Pope was like someone Galileo knew, and went to him and was like, "We're friends, right? So can I like write this book now?" And he's like, "Okay, sure, but I just gotta ask you to do one thing: and don't make me look bad. Don't make the church look bad." Galileo's like, "Got it. You got it. You got it. We're bros." And then he writes the dialogue on the two chief world systems, and the person who represents the Pope is a idiot called Simplicio, who's just this common dude, right? And so the Pope gets pissed off. So then that's why when he goes to defend himself as saying that Aristotle was such a smart man and that whole story, it doesn't work because he already pissed off the Pope. So the reason it didn't work was not the story. The reason it worked was he pissed off the man in power. Um, but Oh yeah, no, I have like tons of just these history of science stories. Um, Now, what was one thing I wanted to sort of talk about in since we were talking about the fundamental question of metaphysics. Uh, this is so let me see if I can share my screen. Okay, there we go. All right, can you see it? So this is from uh, What is Metaphysics? It's a book, right? So he says, why are there beings instead of nothing? That is the question. Presumably, it is no arbitrary question. Why are there beings at all instead of nothing? This is obviously the first of all questions. Of course, it is not the first question in the chronological sense. Individuals as well as people ask many questions in the course of their historical passage over time. They explore, investigate, test many sort of things before they run into the question, why are there beings instead of nothing? Many never run into this question at all. If running into the question means not only hearing and reading the interrogative sentence as uttered, but asking the question, that is, taking a stand on it, posing it, compelling oneself into the state of this questioning. A lot of times we don't want to be in that state of questioning because we don't like it. It's scary. And yet, we are each touched once, maybe even now and then, by the concealed power of this question without properly grasping what is happening to us. In great despair, for example, when all weight tends to dwindle away from things and the sense uh, of things grows dark, the question looms. Perhaps it strikes only once, like the muffled tolling of a bell that resounds in Dasein, in ourselves, and gradually fades away. Like it you in certain moments, um, you hit uh, the existential question hits you, and then it goes away as the world sort of comes back to you, or you come back into the world, right? The question is there in heartfelt joy, for then all things are transformed and surround us as if for the first time, as if it were easier to grasp than they were not, rather than they are, and as they are, right? When we have like a euphoric experience, we're really grateful. Like, man, I'm really like that. This, I'm really glad that McDonald's fries are McDonald's fries. I don't know why I said that. I had McDonald's earlier, but we say things like, yeah, McDonald's fries are McDonald's fries, or like whatever. A Big Mac is a Big Mac. It's rhetorical, but what do we mean by that? We mean like there is nothing else like a Big Mac. And so when we're in that feeling of joy, right? Ecstasy, ecstatic, stasis, state, or stasis as an equilibrium, a state of being, and ecstatic, outside of that state. We get pulled out of that state. And we experience the things around us anew. They're not really new, but we experience them as if for the first time, as if, oh, really, wow, this apple is really sweet, right? The question is there a spell of boredom when we're equally distant from despair and joy, but when the stubborn ordinariness of being lays open a wasteland in which it makes no difference to us whether beings are or are not, right? The modern day version of this is doom scrolling, or you don't feel no pain in this question, then, well, two things: either you're not asking that question properly, or you're dead inside, in which case you don't need to ask the question. Then there's no things at all, there's nothing. um, but if you're dead inside, and that is true for all analytic philosophers, then that answers a lot of questions for me. So I'm just kidding. Yeah, but like, no, doom scrolling where you're like, yeah, I don't know what to like. I'm just scrolling. Or when you turn on your TV. Earlier, it was like, look, you have limited number of TV channels, and the programming is ordered for you. You you can't pick up to us after a certain extent. You can pick what channel you want to watch, and then you have to watch whatever's on TV. Or you go to a video store and buy the VHS or the DVD that was available. Now it's like you have all of these choices. You have 6 or 7 different streaming platforms, but we'll go be like, oh yeah, I don't feel like watching anything. And you go on Netflix and it's like, oh yeah, this TV show seems interesting. I don't feel like investing time in a TV show right now. You scroll down in a movie. Do I want to start a new movie right now? No. And then you do that, and then you end up watching like The Office or Parks and Rec and Community anyways. Why? Because we need comfort. We can't stay in that in-between state for too long until we realize that we are in the in-between state and we need to pick something, damn it. But when the stubborn ordinary, and then again in a distinctive form, the question resonates once again: why are there beings instead of nothing? But whether this question is asked explicitly or whether it merely passes through our Dasein, like a fleeting gust of wind. Again, remember, Dasein means being there, but it is it is Sein is there. So Dasein is being there, but it should be their being, right? So when he says our Dasein, he means this there. There where? Well, there where beings can be, right? Our what we call consciousness, our mind, where beings appear, where your concepts appear, but not even your concepts. Before you conceptualize something, the raw sort of data that appears in your mind, right? Again, philosophy has focused too much on this or that. It has focused too much on waking and dreaming, or waking and sleeping, and oh yeah, what is real, waking or sleeping. Carl Jaspers tells us Screw those two. In either waking or dreaming, your concepts are already made, so you can't tell if or what your preconceptual thinking is like. You know when you can tell that? Between sleeping and waking. In that groggy 5 more minutes, mom. Or that trying to slam onto your alarm and snooze it. Or someone's calling out to you and you can't tell, and you're that bleary-eyed look in your face, and you can't tell the sounds and the smells and the sights, and it's all just unresolved beings. But none of those beings can be resolved into anything at all. And as we, yeah, that split second when you wake up and you're like, what the fuck is going on? That is pre-categorical. That is conceptual. But beings are still appearing in your head. Not as this being or that being or day or night, or I am at my home, or I am in bed and the blanket is green, or my cat is sleeping next to me, or AM or PM. We're not categorizing anything. The things are just there. Now the question becomes, what? Well, when we go from that static and that raw data noise and the world comes into clear picture for us, why? Why does that happen? This is how you can connect this to what I was saying earlier about the evolution. This is on an individual level. On an evolutionary level, why are there things instead of nothing? Why are there things instead of nothing can take infinite different forms. Science only sees it as one and doesn't see any of the other forms. I'm saying no, like, you're saying sense data now, but at that time, can you say sense data? At that time, you cannot even say sense data. At that time, your sense data is not sense data. Your sense data is what you would call sense data once you are able to sense the data and be sensible about it retroactively, which is exactly what science does. It looks at the effects and it tries to come up with probable causes. It does not look at the causes and come up with what effects are going to be. Science cannot predict, it can only retrodict. In that sense, its predictions will always be probabilistic. All right, Return to Hegel is here.
What's up? How are you?
Cool. Yo, we're just going through answering this, just looking at the fundamental question of metaphysics. Why are there things instead of nothing?
Perfect.
Yeah.
I came right in time.
Yeah, and so his point is basically that you can ask it as a physical question, you can ask it as a biological question, uh, as in like at what point did humanity learn how to differentiate, have like multiple things instead of just this raw thing. See, okay, Future Homestead, thank you for bringing this up, because I'm one of the few people who says that Heidegger is basically, in this book, Principle of Reason, Heidegger is basically doing what Hume did in the 1700s, or whenever Hume was alive. I also believe that Hume should be a non-dualist, because he is not an empiricist. And people put him into an empiricist because poor Western philosophy is cucked by substance dualism and needs to put things in one category or the other, or it can't exist. And so when Hume was like, yeah, problem of induction proves that rationalists are losers, they were like, yeah, that means he's empiricist. And then for the rest of the few centuries, everyone was like, yep, Hume is empiricist. He's not, though. Because he just as easily shows that empiricists are losers by showing that they can't tell what causation is. They can't tell causation from correlation, and they can only be, that you can only say correlation. So his point is, an empiricist takes experience and uses it to argue against rationalism. A rationalist takes reason and uses it to argue against empiricism. Hume takes reason and uses it to argue against rationalism, and experience to argue against empiricism. He is neither a rationalist nor a empiricist. He is literally a non-dualist. But that category does not exist for Europe until your 18th century Europe discovers Indian non-dualism, and they're like, "Oh shit, what is this?" And that doesn't get applied retroactively. But for me, Hume is like just terrible. Injustice was done to Hume by calling him an empiricist. Like, just yeah, I have to. Anyways, um, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
I guess like that goes to show that like the labels that people give are not necessarily the accurate identity of them anyway.
no,
It's just
yeah,
we're all just trying to like throughout history label people as certain things and certain categories that we understand, but it becomes more clear later on in history that these categories are actually very limited because we have a limited view at that time of what reality actually is, and it
right.
constantly develops.
So I'd say that the categories are limiting, right? In the
Yeah.
sense that when you make one category, you're uncategorizing it from everything else. Like you're putting it in one box, that means it doesn't get to go in any other box. So
Hmm.
that's what Heidegger says is that okay, if you take a human being, right, and you're like, okay, so you have six different sciences. You have physics, biology, chemistry, sociology, economics, and say psychology, right? And you ask each of these to um, give their study of the human beings. I don't think that's how concepts and categories work. I don't think concepts and categories work at all. But uh, I'll get to that. Heidegger's point is that every scientific um, perspective or every scientific method will exclude the other methods from its answer. So in a way, you will get the 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 equivalent of like the five blind people looking touching an elephant, and then each coming up with like, oh yeah, it's like a snake, or it's like a tree trunk, or it's like a whatever. And then we put all of these different perspectives together to get an average perspective of what a human is. But there's so much loss involved in that because each of these perspective only deals with what they can categorize as entities, as things, according to their conception or their assumption of what their domains of study are. And so each of them in a different way misses out on that about humanity, which is really nothing at all and cannot be captured in anything. Um, sorry, so boring and wrong. What were you referring to about concepts and categories? Or were you replying to Ivan's point about sense data and categorization? I wasn't sure which one that was for. Um, right, categories are always ad hoc. But Heidegger's point is that we get conditioned into thinking that the categories are the things themselves. That the categories which represent the things are the things. And his point is that the the fact that pianos are musical instruments or and furniture and something to throw out of a window and hurt someone and just a piece of thing to keep in your house and have people to look at, or be nothing at all. Or there could have also been a world where pianos never existed. So pianos do have that category of potential non-existence. Heidegger's point is that whatever allows all these possible categories is being. Because if any of these categories was the main category, it wouldn't have been able to be any other. If pianos were only musical instruments by essence, yeah, that's what Heidegger, yeah, he means. He's like, we don't want to reify the categories to be, you want to reify them or hypothesize them to being beings. Yes, that's exactly kind of the translation that is used. Um, yeah, so he says if for whatever reason pianos came with their own essence, that I am a piano and I am musical instrument, and you can only use me as a piano, as a musical instrument, and nothing apart from that, we wouldn't be able to use it, and we it'd be strange, right? It's like us being born and saying I am this person. Yes, because you can use anything as a musical instrument.
It's a very good conversation, by the way.
Right?
Yeah.
Different being for different things, different instruments. I don't know. Are all instruments the same? It's all sound, it's all vibration, it's things moving, right? So if all instruments are just in the sense of, think about instruments are tools. Heidegger's basic point is that the basic character of all things for us is that we see them from the perspective of equipments, of tool. We always see things as, what are the different ways in which I can use this for different purposes? Yeah, equipmental perspective, right? So he says, and it is not until the tool breaks down that we realize, oh wow, there's all these different ways, right? So uh when you're driving a car, um you're not everyone is aware that the car is this, compound machine made of multiple rattling, screwed together, welded together components, with a in very flammable substance in a tank that is being ignited under your butt as you zoom on the road at very high speeds, in a metal, hearse, along with everyone else going to work. But when you
Hell yeah.
yeah, when you realize that, you're like, oh shit, right? When you're like driving and you like get a flat tire, or like your check engine light comes on, or something happens in your car, that's when you become aware of your car, as a machine that has these different parts, and you're like, oh wow, there's no car as such. It's all these parts working together. And if I wanted this car, I could stop and not drive it and make it a home. I can live in it for a week or whatever. Or I could set up shop and make it like an office, whatever, right? Does Heidegger make distinction between epistemic categories? No, for him, epistemic and ontic, they're the same. Because he's like, what gives episteme to epistemic categories and what gives onticity to ontic categories is the same, and it is no thing, so you can't say it is the same thing. It is the same. And so being and reason are the same, and that's what I was saying earlier. He says it in this book. But the thing is, because being is, the word is or are, he can't say being and reason are the same, because it would be saying being and reason be the same. So he says being and reason colon the same. Can we only sleep in beds? Well, I mean, wherever you sleep is a bed, right? If you can sleep anywhere, that's a bed. So we've been conditioned to sleep in beds. Like that happened to me when I moved into this apartment first. I didn't have the last year. Didn't have our bed hadn't been moved in yet. So my partner and I we had like a bunch of blankets and stuff on the ground, and we were sleeping there, and it was pretty nice for like a couple of weeks, and we are actually liking it. But literally, the day that our bed came and we put our bed, like put it up and put the mattress and everything, that night we slept in the bed. We never went back. We are like, yeah, fuck all that, fuck sleeping on the floor and all that, right? So must we only work from 9 to 5? Well, those are those are categories, right? You can find a category where you don't have to work 9 to 5. Like I don't work 9 to 5, right? Depends on what position, what. But my work doesn't define me. I'm not reified. Like my work isn't who I am. Um. Okay, so, uh, Nikki, do you have any specific questions, any points that you were talking to Daniel Tut about that you would want me to
Oh, so many.
debate?
It's hard to actually like narrow it all down. Yesterday, like you were watching, I think a decent chunk of it. I
Yeah,
was going through Daniel Tut's uh discussion with Hawes from Infrared, and they were taught there's a point. So basically, in the initial tweets, when they're talking about having a discussion with each other, Daniel Tut labeled Heidegger as an irrationalist
hmm,
and said that irrationalism is something that is harmful towards Marxism because Marxism is inherently rational, and when you make something irrational, you are actually mystifying it, and then when you mystify something, you're taking away from like the basis of Marxism, which is class struggle or whatever. That's his whole argument for why Heidegger is bad. And there are some people. There's someone who's I talked to Noah about it, but there's some people that are posted by Midwestern Marx as well. That's one article that also said that literally that Heideggerian thinking needs to be removed entirely from leftism because it is a way for the Austrian painter and his party to infiltrate leftism today or whatever. So you just need to take him out because it just mystifies everything, and it's just and mystific. And I was like trying to get deeper into it, and I literally read all the passages in Daniel Tutt's books. I read the Midwestern Marx article and everything. And I tried to go deep into it, and basically the idea that they're talking about is that they think that Heidegger is like something that makes that obfuscates like materialism, and when you obfuscate materialism, you're entirely removing that tool of like understanding reality from like the
yeah,
working class, and then therefore any implementation of irrationalist or Heideggerian thinking leads to the disenfranchisement of the working class. I think their argument is something like that. Of course, I think that it's a misunderstanding of Heidegger because I don't think that Heidegger is an irrationalist. I think that that's a wrong category, and also I believe that Daniel Tutt is getting that impression of Heidegger from Lukács, who's
yeah.
basically has this
That's what I
whole
thought as well from reading.
yeah, yeah, and he did confirm it actually in the discussion that he had with Hawes, right? And then I read
Mhm,
a bit of Lukács and I was like, this is kind of garbage because Lukács actually believes in representation. And I talked to your friend Zach as well,
mhm.
Luminance Bloom, who's the other philosophy Twitch streamer here, about it. And thank you for introducing us. It was a great
Oh
conversation.
yeah, I was.
Um, it was great, honestly. And I talked to him about it, and it seems like there's this almost this idea of like rationality that like takes from the Anglo-boxed Enlightenment values definition of rationalism,
Yes,
which
yes.
and they dare to call themselves Hegelian, and they say that no, their rationality, they're just talking about rationalism as Hegel talks about it, and I'm like, well, actually, Hegel's rationalism it's also integrated with intuition and all these other forms of actually understanding reality, right?
Mm.
So it's just
So
like I just don't know how to approach them where they are at in a way that is digestible and understandable to Daniel Tutt. I'll talk about him like specifically first. I'll eventually talk to the Midwestern Marx guys after because I'm decent friends with them. But it's just like I don't know how to dismantle Daniel Tutt's argument step to step in a way that he will take it, in a way that he can understand it, and in a way that's also digestible and understandable to the audience that will be listening. Because
yeah,
I do think that this is actually a very big opportunity to kind of clear the air regarding the usefulness and I guess, of Heideggerian thinking within all of leftism. And this is where the discussions are happening. Nobody else is actually having this discussion to this magnitude. So I don't want to fumble the bag. I want to do a good job on Thursday. So that's where I'm at right now.
when I first read Heidegger, I thought it was a practical joke. It wasn't until I heard empty Buddha and Luminance Bloom talk about it that I even believed anyone had a coherent understanding. Um, no, like even when I first read Heidegger, I so when I was at U Alberta, there was a existentialist professor there called Robert Birch, who's quite well known, and he wrote a thesis on Heidegger, like his PhD thesis, like back when Heidegger was still like kicking around and was like
Hmm.
just denazified. And it, back then he was like, I almost didn't get a job because like because I refused to like not like he was like it would be hard to get a job if you didn't toe the line and say, oh yeah, screw that Nazi, right? Oh, he was denazified in like I think like the Nuremberg things because they were like, yeah, it's
Right, but I think that's an easy way to discredit Heidegger without actually wrestling with his ideas
no,
because
like I agree because my point is so Ivan, I think I and this might like I think Heidegger himself did not have a clear enough reading of Heidegger in the sense that again Heidegger has to be looked at in phrases, in phases, right? There's early Heidegger who was very much Kantian, Husserlian, and there's later Heidegger who was very much Dilthian, Nietzschean, even like Pyrrhonian, Socratic in some form. And that one was more towards the Taoist, Buddhist kind of ideas.
Mhm.
But one thing that has always been sort of remarkable throughout his thing is his obsession with the Greeks, right? And almost to this, in a sense of a fetishism of the Greeks. So if you're talking if you want to maybe take I don't think that that's a good point he made that Heidegger has no theory fetishism. He fetishizes the Greeks very much. What are you talking about? He was a Nazi and he
Hmm.
fetishized the Greeks and the Germanic folk so much. No, but the point is that his sort of auto-Catholicism, he's like, no, there was something about these Greeks that they got that nobody else got. And then the Germanic folk were also made of the same stuff, so to speak. But the problem is his entire philosophy was based on the thing that there is no stuff that makes all the other that makes stuff up. It's no thing. So it was like, well, if it is no thing, if you're saying all humans are no thing, then you're kind of doing that animal farm thing where it's like all humans are no thing. Some humans are just more no thing than others or whatever. Right. And saying that no, like, yeah, all humans are free Dasein, but the Germanic Dasein is more better Dasein than the other Dasein. And it's like, no, then you didn't get your own point, man. Like you were like you couldn't uncondition yourself from the very kind of um um, uh, categorical conditioning that you were talking about, right? And early Heidegger, like basically he saw World War One and like capitalism and communism and all that, and he was like, look, we're both of these are focused too much on beings, on things. Um, so we're gonna head into this technological nihilism. But he thought that Nazi Germany would, at that time would have the right idea. But and so he joined the Nazi Party, and he wanted to become their official philosopher. But the thing is, now we don't know exactly. I can't say exactly why. I have to do some more reading. But his philosophy was too confusing for the Nazi upper brass, and they didn't consider him to be too important. So he was a Nazi. We're not going to say he wasn't a Nazi. We're not going to downplay the fact by saying that the Nazis didn't like him either. They just definitely kept him on. But after he was denazified, he kind of like switched around to being like, yeah, no, the real danger,
Yeah, but
like
I feel like the
Nazism
easy
wasn't the problem. Nazism was a symptom of this technological
right.
nihilism and all of that. And it was like,
I feel like the easy like answer to it too is that anyone who was in a position of power who wasn't like critical, like class critical or whatever, probably would have also been in that position because he was a
yeah,
very highly regarded. He was the head of the philosophy department, I believe,
yeah. He was a
right? So
very, very famous public
it
intellectual at the
yeah,
time.
yeah. It's not like that's like okay or whatever, but like
No,
like
no, but
people
it
end up learning more about
happens.
history after it happens more than
Yeah.
during the present
But
moment,
but
right?
it's happening. It's happening in the U.S. now. It's happening in Britain. It's happening in India. When the powers that the powers that are ruling right now, before they came to power, there were intellectuals who were going on about how this is going to be bad and their policies are going to be terrible. And then when they came to power, these people jumped ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this includes like not just economists and stuff like that, but like scientists who are like, oh yeah, this person is, and it doesn't take much for people to switch. I'm not saying again, I'm not saying that that's a reason that we should like look beyond Heidegger's Nazism. No, in fact, I'm saying that we should be very careful that another Heidegger does not rise up, given the sort of ideological clash that we're seeing in academia right now with religion and wokeism
Well,
and
yeah,
all of
because
that, right?
what I do want to say is like the whole thing of like, oh well, someone should have known better at the time. That's placing a lot of emphasis on like
No,
ethics as a framework, actually, right? Like
it was
normative
Nazi
ethical
Germany. What did you
frameworks.
expect? Like it was Nazi Germany. The ones who had to escape had already escaped. The good people had already escaped. If he chose to stay behind and like stay there, he chose to stay there. So it's not even a question of like he could have known better. No, his treatment of Jewish academics and his own Jewish students is well known. He was anti-Semitic. There's no doubt about that.
Hmm.
And he did share in some sense the views of the Nazi party. That's not something to really like sidestep. But the point is that there were other German, Austrian, Swiss academics who left during that time, right? The Vienna Circle, Einstein, uh,
Einstein
Wittgenstein,
was
so many people.
Jewish, and Wittgenstein was also Jewish, so it makes
Right,
sense that they would leave.
exactly, right? So he stayed because he was on the dominant side of the struggle, on the side of staying on which side of staying on the side of the struggle, which would benefit him. Like think about this: had Heidegger gone with like left with the Jewish exodus of academics, the Germans would have called him a class traitor,
Hmm.
right? They already did. They were already, yeah. Heidegger was pretty gung ho about it. He wasn't like, oh, I don't know, I might join. No. He wanted to be the chief philosopher of the Nazi party, and he wanted to make the Nazi philosophy like his philosophy, the Nazi philosophy. They didn't take him seriously, and they didn't. They thought his philosophy was too difficult or complicated, right? But he, that's no reason to say that he was any less of a Nazi or anything. No. He was still pretty gung ho about it. The kind of like you can see the referrals he wrote to like his non-Jewish students versus his Jewish students, and that it's quite shocking, right? But and that it is his anti-Semitism combined with that sort of Greek worship that does give is responsible for his German folk belief.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can we point towards any parts of Heidegger's thought or philosophy that would enable him to have such bad praxis surrounding, like, actually his personal decisions in politics? Is there anything in his philosophy that actually, like, would help him, like, legitimize to himself, like, his membership?
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's shocking that someone who writes, especially who writes things that come so close to Buddhism and are like sage like, was also a
Hmm.
Nazi. Like that's what's
But isn't
shocking to
like
me, right?
Buddhism and like an Eastern philosophy known for like being a way to legitimize the Nazis? And especially like in how the Bhagavad Gita was used by I think it was like was it Himmler or was it Goebbels? I think it was Goebbels that
No,
had
but that was
that
always
used to
that
quote
was
it.
yeah, but that was always like that was always their like appropriation of it, right? But um
Right.
Heidegger's like uh no, I think the point is that Heidegger look, there was anti-Semitism in Europe, in Germany at the time.
It was very popular,
Heidegger
actually, like
yeah, and Heidegger
anti-Semitism.
could not escape it. Now we want to say you want to say he could not escape it as like being charitable to him, like that was his conditioning. He was raised in anti-Semitic things, but no, it's like Ivan says, he did. It wasn't something was he was peer pressured into or pushed into. No, he actively like participated in that.
Hmm.
Now the question remains: how did he square this in his own head? Because um, that's my question, is that or did he truly have like a transformative moment between like his early and late phases where he you know, maybe he was no longer Nazi in his heart anymore, and he truly had transformed, which I mean, I don't really want to offer any hypothesis on that. That doesn't really give us, it's arguing on a counterfactual. But I think the idea that Heidegger always left us with is that look to the past and try to live the future, or like learn from it what you can for the future. And his point was always, no, look, the Greeks, they were great. And this is his later stuff. In the earlier stuff, he constantly like praises the Greeks and stuff. In the latter part of his career, he talks about how the Greeks were also limited in a sense, where he says, yes, the Greeks thought about phusis as presence, but he's like, their problem was that they didn't look beyond the presence. They didn't look at presencing. And that's why Plato got stuck with eidos as presence. And since then, we've only been stuck with the phenomenal and the presenced and things which are present, and we've forgotten how to look at things which are behind that. That is something I do agree with. That the Greeks, while they were great, they had their problems. But his main point was that instead of just going down this path that we're going down, this sort of scientific, techno-scientific, nihilistic path where everything is a problem to be solved and every question must be answered, in a sense where what is the remain, and because science can't answer every question, or science can't answer the question it tries to answer in a complete way, that there will always be a remainder. Except when there is a mystery, and this is to quote Gabriel Marcel, when there is a mystery, that remainder is awe. But when it's a problem, then that remainder is a reminder that either you haven't done enough or your method is forever limited. And Heidegger's ultimate point has always been, and this I agree because this is what made me leave the sciences a long time ago before I ever read Heidegger, is that the sciences make the world boring. They take wonder out of the world.
But isn't aren't they supposed to kind of take wonder out of the world, to kind
Yes,
of sterilize it to make it able to be studied? Because the wonder and the emotions and all these things that are not considered to be objective can come in the way of being able to understand the thing, the object.
as fighting
Yep.
words.
Right.
Them's fighting words, he says. Okay. So no, I live by them and I know how to fight. But my point is, he agrees with that, right?
Hmm.
But he says there is a difference between bracketing and then just living in the bracketing world. He's like, yes, science is supposed to demystify. Yes, science is supposed to help us understand the things better. But the moment we start taking that demystified scientific worldview as the only worldview to explain things, we lose out on other worldviews. Then you can't enjoy horror. You can't enjoy things like absurd humor. Maybe you
Hmm.
can't. oh, I abstract art because you're thinking too scientifically. I'm not saying everyone who's a scientist does that. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying that is the conditioning. Science conditions you to abstract only in one sense, in the scientific sense, in the quantitative sense, not the qualitative sense. Right?
I
And
have a
that's happened with
question.
positivism in like psychology and
Mhm.
sociology, where they're like, no, you can't be positivistic about this. You got to be hermeneutical. Yeah.
Do you think the idea is to like feed people a framework that is like digestible to them, and that science and rationalism is the most well, in air quotes, most well working framework, and most people are too stupid or cannot handle being able to understand multiplicity, so therefore people were just taught by default this
No,
easier framework to understand that is like
no.
good enough. Is that the
I
idea? Do you think?
I think we're still living in a Western timeline. I think when we talk about things like people or the world, we're not talking uniformly because the world has not developed uniformly. Right? You were talking earlier about like, yeah, this idea of rationality is a very Western notion. It is, right? But look at Africa, look at parts of Asia, look at parts of South America. Those countries are still in like a neo-colonial perspective, neo-colonial sort of life. They're not political colonies. Hang on, I'll just be right back. I gotta.
Sure. Hello, people. I am here. I'm filling the void with my voice. Hello, human beings. We are waiting for Empty Buddha 92 to return in this intermission. In the meantime, please take a cup of tea. There's some refreshments on the side.
Sorry. Okay, I'm back.
I did
Um.
it. I filled the intermission with the intermission voice.
All
I
right.
narrated
Cool.
it.
Um. So as I was saying, his what was I saying?
We're talking about rationalism being
Yeah.
like a Western framework and
Yeah. So many countries in the world are still div- economic colonies, if not political colonies, and as such, economic colonialism still counts towards is still an important factor in um, overriding of local and cultural norms and
mm,
practices and forms of knowledge because it's economic and they're like sure, your traditional way of doing things is good, but it's not as useful as modern medicine, and it doesn't
right.
make as much money as modern medicine.
Why do you think that like economically the West was able to take over in the first place? Like was it just brute force or like how did their why did their economic model like end up dwarfing the rest of them?
No, it's historical, right? It could have happened another way. There could have been battles. There could have been situations that could have gone other way around. Like Vasco da Gama, the guy who came before Vasco da Gama, Bartholomew. I forgot his last name. Bartholomew something. Um, that guy went all the way to the Cape of Good Hope at South Africa and then came back. But had he not gone there, had he not come back, Vasco da Gama might not have had the courage to go past. Had he gone into the Cape of Good Hope, which was called the Cape of Storms then, and died, Vasco da Gama might not have left Portugal and come to India
Hmm.
because the Cape of Storms might not have been renamed the Cape of Good Hope. It would have remained the Cape of Storms. I don't know. I'm saying there's a lot of uh, things could have gone very differently, right?
But it just did go the way it went.
It did go the way it went. Like World War I or finally World War II was so bad. Even though the Allies won, it was so bad for Britain and France that hey, Luminance Bloom is here. It was
Hello,
so bad
Luminance Bloom.
for the Allies that they had to let go of a lot of their colonies. Right? It wasn't that they wanted to let go. It was just economically that it just made sense to trim the fat. And the allies were and the colonies were like, this is the best time to demand independence because our colonial masters are at their weakest. So that could have happened before because of whatever war, right? Could have happened during Napoleon's time or something like that. It could have happened differently. But the point is that right now, the West is uh, sort of it. The West lurched past the rest of the world and then kind of slowed down in the 20th century, and now the rest of the world is kind of um, catching up a little bit. So the question of like human rationality and stuff would really be interesting to see in like another 200 years when the least developed countries amongst us have at least reached some general level of self-sustaining
Yeah. So
like that.
apparently there's projections that like the GDP of like Africa and like India are actually going to be higher than like the USA in like 90 years.
Right, and so it's that's but it's like all of that economic growth is happening on the basis of, like you said, the success of the Western economic model,
Hmm.
or either one, the socialist or the China or like West capitalist. But
Hmm.
like uh, the problem is that we don't know whether if because see science is the technologically advanced form of Western traditional medicine and alchemy and natural philosophy, right? It is those things evolved into a technologically robust, sophisticated scientific enterprise. Alchemy became chemistry, natural history became biology, astrology became astronomy, natural philosophy became physics. Those same things existed in ancient India, in ancient China, in ancient Japan, right? In uh, Native American cultures and Native African cultures, but the development of those was stopped and um, wait. So Nikki, you should plug your Discord server. I'm gonna make one, but there's someone in the chat
Oh,
asking for a
oh,
Discord server, so you
oh,
should.
absolutely. Yes, and also anyone who is, wants to join yours is welcome to join this one. I think there should be an overlap. We can have good
Yeah, no, for
communities.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll plug the Discord server right now. Join it definitely. Oh, he's there already. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, AG1. We're good friends.
What is this? Guns? Oh yeah, Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jared Diamond. So there's another great book
See
that
you, AG1, by the way.
is this book called Blood and Guts: Short History of Medicine by Roy Porter. Very good book.
Mm.
Very good book on like just how like oh my god, if you lived prior to germ theory in Europe, you were better off just dying than going to a doctor.
Actually, yeah, because they'll infect you with like sepsis
Yeah,
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So there, the story I like to tell is a funny story of Rene Laennec, the guy who invented the stethoscope. He saw two kids playing on the street, and they were using like a metal pipe, and they could hear each other's heartbeat. And he's like, "Wow, that's fascinating. I wonder if I can do something with that." Now, tuberculosis, or as the time at that time was known, consumption was around, but they didn't know it was caused by a bacteria, so they just called it consumption because people who consume tobacco and because of bad hygienic conditions and stuff got it. Um, now, if you have TB or consumption, there is a very telltale symptom. It's called phthisis. I don't know how to pronounce it,
You
but
probably
it's
sound so well.
PHTHSIS.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucked up.
Pertussis?
Phthisis. That's what it is. Um, and it's like a whisper in the heartbeat, and it's a telltale sign of tuberculosis. Even like I asked one of my doctor friends like a couple of years ago. He's like, yeah, no, that's even today. That's pretty telltale. And but the thing is, they didn't know what consumption or TB was and what caused it, so they didn't know how to cure it. So if you went to the doctor and the doctor put something to your heart and was like, yeah, you got phthisis, that was a death sentence. You just knew for certainty that you were going to die. If you didn't go to the doctor, you'd just be like, oh, yeah, I'm getting sick. I might have consumption, but I don't know for sure. I might die. I might not die.
Mm-hmm.
Then after germ theory got invented, they were like, oh yeah, it's caused by microbes, and then you can use antibiotics and all that. But the funny part is that Rene Laennec got diagnosed with consumption by his own um, invention, by his own nephew, and he died.
Oh, let's go.
So it's like we were just talking about like historical conditioning in general. Um, but Heidegger's point is that we our our language has in one way been conditioned, and also is conditioning our thinking, that we our ideas of substance metaphysics and the language of nouns go together. And it is not until one of these illusions is broken that we realize that we could have an alternative metaphysics, which is like a process metaphysics or something like that,
Hmm.
or we could have like an alternate form of language which focuses not on subject verb
Right.
agreement, but like some other
Um,
kind of structure.
right. How would you actually define a process metaphysics?
So process metaphysics in like Whitehead's terms would be that where the uh, ultimate existence, the bottommost existent of that metaphysics, are not um, uh, ousia or substances, in the sense that they have an essence and then surrounding properties, and the essence is what makes it. But the processes are temporal happenings that come into existence, persist, and then go
Mm,
out of existence, right? And the point is that you can look around and you can see so many processes. The thing with substance metaphysics is that substance metaphysics says that substances are primary, and processes happen to substances. Like substances go through processes,
hmm.
and process metaphysics says no. There are
Right.
just processes without any underlying substances, and you don't need to have substances to be like. Again, when I say that, I like to give the quantum mechanical example for this, because physics is an excellent example of both thinking and language being conditioned. Right? You have substance metaphysics from Aristotle, which makes us believe that there's these measurable quantitative things such as space and time and matter and energy, which get changed around and thought of in different ways. Even but you can say Einstein proved Newton wrong and Newton proved Aristotle wrong. We're still using matter and energy in exactly the way Aristotle uses it, like in maybe not mass, but energy definitely. Like for example, we think of energy, we don't know where the word comes from. This is completely an Heideggerian analysis, and I'm typing into the chat. Energy comes from um, the Aristotelian energia, which comes from en ergon. Ergon is the telos or
Mm,
purpose, and so en ergon is anything that enables the purpose achieving of a thing. So energy is that which allows the purpose or telos of anything to be achieved. And if you look at what the work energy theorem is in physics, the work done in moving an object from place A to place B is the difference between the kinetic energy it has in place A to place B. So energy is the work done in taking a object from its initial place to its destination. Energeia is destiny, right? That's what Aristotle called it. We like to think we're though that far from Aristotle, right? Yes, yeah, exactly. So there's our language and our thinking are always influencing each other, and the way that they influence each other gives us these various accounts of being, like eidos or ousia or the absolute or God or whatever, right? But the example I was giving of quantum was that for so long these sort of democratist atomism was that, oh yeah, things are made out of things are made out of things all the way down, and that was the atomistic thinking, um, until you come to the 20th century when the scientists are like, well, no, they're not made out of particles all the way down. There's a limit to the particularity, and when when, to use colloquial language, for the lack of a better word, when we're not observing the particle, it is a wave. Although that's not what happens. But the question is, oh, what a wave of what? And it's like, no, it's not a wave of. There's no thing there that is waving. There is just a fundamental wave. And that's what's so difficult for us. That was what was so difficult for people like for Bohr and Heisenberg and Einstein to initially grapple with. That, oh, the particles can also be waves, but then what is waving? Because we're used to seeing waves as a mode of a substance instead of waves being the fundamental mode of existence. And that is what quantum mechanics did to science. It got quantum mechanics and relativity were the beginning of the ridding of the substance metaphysics underlying science. But we're still not completely able to shake it off, right? In that Nietzschean sense that we killed God, but God's shadow is still like, we haven't escaped that shadow of God. Subjects finding objects all the way down, subjects. Yeah, exactly. It just goes in that sort of regression. No, but like Heidegger. So the reason I wouldn't, what I was saying, Nikki, about the Daniel Tut thing is, so you one argument you could obviously go with is, what are you talking about? Heidegger is not it doesn't have fetishism. He was a damn Nazi and he fetishized the Greeks and the Germans. But that's not, maybe not an argument you want to go with. The other argument you could do is um, kind of use the Hume argument I was using earlier, uh, to
Mm-hmm.
say that to call Heidegger irrationalist is also to call Hume irrationalist,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not. And the basic argument you could take is that Heidegger is not irrationalist. He is what you could call proto non-dualist. But then if you are dug into one of the dualisms, Hegelianism or Marxism, and so dug in that you see Heidegger being an irrationalist, not a problem in itself, but a problem for Marxism, then you will see Heidegger, no
Mm-hmm.
matter where he stands, as falling on one end of the one end of the dualism,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Wait, what did Heidegger would take what as a compliment? Is that poetry? Yeah, no, Heidegger, we talked about this earlier. Heidegger definitely thinks that that Plato's biggest mistake was saying that philosophy and poetry are separate. Well, if you read Plato's like the esoteric stuff, he's all about the poetry and the mania. But no, Zach, we talked about this earlier where I was like, no, philosophy should be like poetry and not like science, because that's the problem. Um, Especially when like it's sort of just screaming at us. Um, Many worlds interpretation advocate. Oh yeah, no, I also like the many worlds interpretation, and each world for me represents a different kind of conditioning, different kind of historical conditioning that we could have sort of had. But my point is again that being is not found in any of the many worlds. It is precisely that which is between the many worlds and pushes the many worlds separate as many worlds. It is, if you will, the process of the collapse and the resolution, not any of the things that result as a process of the collapse and the resolution. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's not any of the many worlds. It is the blank space between, the bleed space between the parallel universes, if I'm to use a comic book. Well, no, not for many worlds interpretation. For the Copenhagen interpretation, there's a collapse, and if you use the language of the Copenhagen interpretation as a standard candle for the language of quantum mechanics, then you do say there is a collapse. Many worlds interpretation, yeah, many worlds interpretation doesn't have a collapse. Every world continues. But many worlds do Uh, decoherence would be, but yeah, again, decoherence would be a good word. Would the many worlds, because in my head, the many worlds don't just split off, right? Um, the many worlds could rejoin, like constructive. My problem with the many worlds theory is that if it was truly a quantum mechanical theory, then the many worlds thinks of one world entity as a kind of wave form, but it always thinks of that waveform as a kind of diverging wave that never really interferes with itself. I think a really interesting form of the many worlds interpretation would be one where many worlds exist and the choices don't just diverge, they could converge, and you could find yourself making the same choice in two different worlds but not know, right? The way that we think, oh, maybe it could have been different in another world. No, maybe it could have been same. Yeah, so decoherence kills constructive um, interference between some components. So you're saying it like um like counter like possibilities counteract each other. So that so there's never any convergence, but there's always divergence. That's interesting. Um no, but I'm like, given any of the uh uh um quantum mechanical interpretations, many worlds theory would definitely be the one that I would see too. Um, but the collapse thing is just too anthropocentric for me. Um, Bohm pilot wave interpretation. mm, Uh, but I'm more of the idea that there is no collapse, right? Yes, but the wave function does exist, right? Only the wave function exists. The wave function takes modes, and those modes appear to us as particles. I think that that's pretty standard language without avoiding collapse and that kind of language. Yes, so only the wave function exists. Um, to observe any one world would decohere the other. Or to experience any one world would decohere the other. You wouldn't know that that those exist. You can't know that other worlds exist. But see, this is what I was trying to say earlier. That, or if only the wave function exists, see, okay, that's what I'm saying. The fuzzy edges are what is real, as opposed to uh, uh, well-defined reality. So if you say only the wave function exists, what is the wave function? Okay, let's say you have a set of 10 possibilities for a system to evolve into, right? It has 10 possible ways it can evolve. Is the wave function a numerical set of all those? No, right? It's the square of it's the distribution of the square of the amplitude. That means it's the area under the curve. That means it's not just individual elements, but it's an integration of the infinitesimal space between them as well. So the wave function of the many worlds is more than a sum of its parts of the individual worlds just put together, the individual timelines put together. It includes the gap in the middle, which distinguishes those timelines from other timelines. Without the gap, the timelines wouldn't be distinguishable. So this goes back to, Ivan, what we were talking about earlier. Is the question of why are there things instead of nothing at all in the physical sense different, that much different from are is different, what was it, are different things differentiable from indifferentiability? The square of the wave function is how we calculate the probability of what we see. Yes, but the wave function includes what we can see and what we cannot see as well, right? So when we conceptualize it, we can only conceptualize what we can see. My point is that exactly, that science, because it is a scientia, a knowing of the entities, it is limited to what we can see and what we can know. But the point of the many worlds interpretation is not the world, not the many either. It is the inter. The inter does not get conceptualized in the area under the curve. It is an interpretation. Interpretation means there is a mapping that is happening. And the mapping means our categories have to map onto the categories outside. The objective categories have to map onto the subjective categories. But then the mapping means that when my fingers have to map onto these, not only do my fingers have to map onto my fingers, the gaps have to map on with the gaps. Science doesn't like the gaps. Science just likes the things. And when it finds a gap, it wants to fill that gap with more things. Until it figures out that when you go down to the bottom of it all, like you said, the only thing that exists is the gaps. And this is, by the way, this is not the God of the gaps argument. That if there's a gap, God explains it. No. This is quite the opposite. This is what I like to call the gaps are the God argument. God of the gaps is whatever is unexplained, you call it God. No. This is different. I'm saying the beyond, the between, the gap is fundamental, not the things that exist. It is not the many worlds in the many world interpretation that are the important things. It is the interpretation of them being spread into their differentiability, which is important. And that is the true aspect of the wave function. That is why the wave function can take different forms based on where or when or how you observe it or what probability it takes. Okay, so but when we have I'm saying there are things in the wave function that cannot be conceptualized. You are never conceptualizing the whole wave function. Or that part of the wave function which you are saying is conceptualized is not the whole of the wave function. Oh, I don't think realism is boring at all. I think reality is far more fascinating than we give it credit. I think I think, see, again, when you say the many worlds interpretation is boringly realist, that brings me back to my point about saying that science makes reality boring. Because you think realism is boring. Because you think reality is boring, so to be realistic is boring. I don't. I don't see reality as boring. I see reality as fundamentally exciting. And so so I see realism the way that it is said today to be wrong. But this is what I mean. The definition of reality and realism. No, I'm saying the definition of realism that is guided by the framework of reality that we get from science paints reality as this dry, boring piece of shit. Art, on the other hand, says reality can be whatever you want it to be. Which is why when you look at realism in art, it's something different. Realism in science is. I also sometimes I don't like realism. Like I don't like Christopher Nolan's Batman. Too realistic. Can't have a guy dressed as a flying mouse and then have it be realistic. No, he's a comic book character. Don't give me a realism. Christopher Nolan can keep his Batman in his ass.
This is amazing, by the way. I'm listening.
I'm just sorry. I'm just.
This is actually amazing.
No, it's not because reality doesn't meet my fantasies. It's because there are parts of reality that we can only fantasize about that science cannot get to. Like the fact that you cannot measure how fast an electron is going and where it is at the exact same time with the exact same certainty or simultaneously high certainty. Certainty going up in one reduces the certainty in the other. Why? That's just how it is. That's how reality is. Reality doesn't want us to find it. In the boredom of the meaningfulness of the world. Yes, right? It's yeah, it doesn't meet their fantasies, right? So the point is, well, why? And then we say things like reality is stranger than fiction. No, fiction is based on our reality. We haven't given reality a chance because we shut reality down the first chance we get to analyze it. I would want a really like I would recommend a great reading, not Heidegger reading, but Gabriel Marcel. We're covering Gabriel Marcel in my existentialism class right now, and he talks about this distinction between the book is called Being and Having. The chapter is the ontological mystery, and he talks about a problem and a mystery. A problem is a problem to be solved, and a problem has constraints on it which allow it to be solved. Science puts constraints. When you conceptualize something, you constrain it to one certain way, as a mathematical concept or a physical concept or a scientific concept or an artistic concept. A conceptualization is a constraining. Ception means to see, right? Inception, perception. So when you conceptualize something, you constrain it because you conceptualize it in one way. And because you conceptualize it in one way, you lock out all other ways of seeing that. And he says, then that's why it's not a problem of being. It's a mystery of being. And it will always be, it will always be a problem of being for scientists, for science. Because science is and I love these words that he uses. Etymologically, right? Like you grasp it. I think prehensile from Monkey's Tail is prehensile. You can grasp it. It's like a hand, but not quite hand. This is where, again, if you heard the Heidegger, thank you, Luminance Bloom, big help. If you've heard his strange terminology, present at hand and ready to hand, what present at hand, ready to hand mean have to do with comprehending. Oh yeah, that's true. Um, uh, what is it? Zuhand. Uh, but uh, present at hand means like something that has already been conceptualized. You've already grasped it. It's in your hand. And ready to hand something that is like pre-conceptual, pre-comprehension, right? Or pre or prehension means grasping. So is that sort of pre-conceptual like state? Oh yeah, begriff is also grasping. Yeah, so I've not read Heidegger in the German. I've only read Heidegger in the English, which is really funny, right? Because German is like obviously like everyone says a lot more logical language than English and all that. But because English is such a fucked up language, studying Heidegger in English has actually helped me, be better at Heidegger. English is so fucked up, and then he's like making us. Okay, 1 second. Holy shit! Wow, there's like 163 people watching from Twitter and 4 people from Twitch. What the hell? That's crazy. I'm just going right now. All right, thanks, Ivan. I'd love to have you on stream sometime for talking quantum mechanics and cosmology and all of that stuff. Always down. It'll be fun. Cheers. Yes, exactly. You can sort of take your distance from it. Yeah, I think, but we might wrap up here in a little bit, anyways. So what I wanted to do right at the beginning, something I was sort of talking about, was going over the different names that Heidegger has for being. Right. So we got to a couple, but let me just turn on the light here. Um, so he says that it's the unconcealing of beings, right? Aletheia. Lethe is concealing, and aletheia is unconcealment. And again, he says that when we were talking earlier, and this is Zach, this is an example from Carl Jaspers, that he says we privilege sleeping and waking too much in philosophy. We need to look at that in between state between sleeping and waking, when things are just like all bleary and blurry, and when those things come to be like into focus as individual things. I think that was one of the best examples I read of illustrating this idea of unconcealing. That the foregathering, these things which are in the background, get unconcealed to you as things. You can just see them, right? When you're taking a picture of something and you're focused on the person in the front, the background is unfocused. And then when you focus on the background, the person in front goes out of focus. Um, what does this focusing for us between all the different things and between beings and being for us in Heidegger is logos. Liminal. Oh, liminal was a good word. I was looking for liminal earlier when I was talking about like between the limits. Yeah, liminal. Yeah. Um, so like if you've heard of like liminal spaces are those in between spaces which seem strange when people aren't there. Like an empty airport, an airport that is supposed to be full of people, but when it's empty, when there's nobody there, like the airportness of that airport really gets to you. That it's strange. That wow, everything's closed. Wow, there's nobody here. Nobody probably lives really close to here. Everyone who works here probably lives like a little bit far away, or like all these odd things like about what kind of people like work at the airport. Could I ever work at the airport? How early do you have? All these questions that weren't arising for what seemed to be a regular place start coming to you, right? And um that's when that being now comes into the foreground instead of background. It emerges, it arises, it appears as one being amongst all other beings, right? um then when I worked at ticket office in undergrad, I would get so strongly. Yeah, right. It's that strange, uncanny feeling, and I think that's one of the terms that Heidegger uses. Uncanny. You're like it's not supposed like, and I think I never understood what uncanny meant. Uncanny means like to me, uncanny means like can't really be this way, right? Again, because in my head, uncanny always related to X-Men in the comics, and it's uncanny X-Men. And it was like, why would you call them uncanny? And I was like, yeah, because they're mutants. That they can't really be like that. Liminal also meant in the ancient world the twilight space. Oh yeah, no, dude, for sure. Before you talked about that, I was talking about ancient Heidegger and the Greeks by Hyland, and he talks about chaos from Hesiod, and he says if we look at chaos as our modern word, it's unintelligible, undifferentiated, unarticulable. But if you look at the old meaning of chaos, it is a gap, a yawn, a separation, the in between, right? So it is liminal. Being is liminal. It is that which it is unlimited, but it is liminal in that and limiting that it limits. It creates the limits for all things. Itself has no limits and exists as your limit. Uncanny, feeling like you have been unhomed. Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. Oh, because okay, I get it. Like a home is where a place where you can be yourself, or just can be. I see. Um, interesting. Mm, interesting. Um, yeah. So I think we can stop sharing this. But no, I think this was pretty interesting first stream. I might do more of these. Um, Maybe look at some more text, kind of like what Luminance Bloom was doing in his stream. Uh, Home is actually in the etymology of uncanny. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. No, but dude, like the other day, I realized this. So first of all, like off, uh, we know science comes from scientia, but we always thought scientia means seeing. No, scientia means seeing the things. So I went on Google Translate and I typed in, I reverse translates sci nihilum, which means knowing nothing. Right. So if Heidegger is like science wants to know nothing about the nothing, well, yeah, because science is a scientia. It is a knowing of the things. It can't know nothing. Then you'd need a sci nihilance, a scientific understanding of the nothing, if that is even possible. Whatever that would look like, I don't know. But no, I think I'm gonna call it a day. It has been 3.5 hours. Holy shit, it's been 3.5 hours. But um, Nikki, do you have any other final like questions? If you have any others, you can always let me know and we can talk about it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I was
Oh
listening
yeah.
mostly passively this time because I'm like I have a lot of things to do today.
No, fair enough. It's a chill
But yeah,
space.
yeah, I really appreciated being able to have this space to talk to you and listen. I was actually on my way to the cafe. I was playing your stream on the car speakers, like blasting them with the windows down, so
Nice,
the whole city heard you. So
nice,
it's amazing, we're spreading the word.
nice.
But
Um,
I really appreciated it. I was gonna stream today, but something came up, so tomorrow I would be down. If anyone is willing, you or Luminance Bloom, if you guys are down to talk about Heidegger tomorrow, I'm doing a deep dive today.
what
So
time are you? What time are you You're doing that touch stream tomorrow or Thursday? You said.
I have to confirm with him. We were thinking about Thursday. It might be another day, but I'm going to do a stream in preparation just to like fully solidify all the arguments and Yeah.
Yeah,
And just
I'm down. I have like I just have a couple like some office hour stuff, but otherwise throughout the day I'm down. So just
cool,
let me know and we can do something.
cool. That'd be
All right,
awesome.
I'm gonna do let's do a shout out to Luminance Bloom
Shout out
and
Luminous Bloom.
yeah, let's go.
Yes, and also everyone should join the Discord server.
Oh yeah, join the Discord server. Um, and please follow Luminance Bloom. Follow
Please follow Luminous Bloom.
yeah, please follow Return to Hegel and Ivan.
Th-
Where's Ivan? Follow Ivan
Thank
Neo as
you.
well. Yeah, we got this little like community of people going, so that's fun, and I like it. We all get together and
Yeah,
talk, and I'm really happy.
absolutely incredible things happening in the philosophy community.
Right, right,
So you said you had
excellent.
100 viewers on Twitter?
On Twitter, yeah, yeah, because I stream this on Twitch and on Twitter using Restream. So it's
Cool.
171 right now.
Do you know if
There's
it's
four on Twitch.
concurrent or it's like, do you know if it's like concurrent viewers, like total viewers?
I'm not sure. I think it's concurrent. It's saying 171 views. I have no idea.
That's
Uh,
insane.
I
I will
right?
definitely
Like,
check that.
yeah, because I'm using Restream, and like Restream allows me to you can do for free. You can stream it to 2 destinations, and then if you pay, you can do it to like 4 or something. So
Amazing.
the first one that we did with you and Zach, I did. Yeah, you should, Zach. Like, check it out because like, I did it because I streamed our first stream to Facebook as well, and so like my family and friends were able to also see it. And then I'm like, wait, I could probably also do it to Twitter. Why not? And so yeah,
And Twitter, I think Twitter might be like total viewers, but still that's a lot of viewers.
right.
I'm just
I
like
think
not
it's
sure how to count it because like I remember like Hawes got like 25,000, and like and some people are like commenting, no, that's actually just total, not concurrent or something. So I don't know. Like I'll definitely look into it.
okay.
It might be concurrent, which is insane because I know that if you're streaming on Twitter, there's not a lot of competition because not a lot of people are streaming, right? So your thing
Yeah,
will
yeah,
go up in the algorithm. I think that's
yeah,
how it works.
yeah. Right. I don't know. We'll see.
That's
Anyways,
awesome.
thank you all. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Future Homestead, Mbugai. Who else was here? A whole bunch of people here. Ivan was here. Uh, all right. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
I didn't know it. People would show up and, really. But there was people from yesterday actually in Nikki's chat who were like, yeah, we'll show up. And some of you did. So great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, thank you. So I will
Future
see you.
Homestead, you're awesome, by the way. Let's fucking go.
Does Twitter let the stream play while scrolling the timeline?
It
Uh,
does. It does. That's why. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
100%.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, we should look into that Twitter. Yeah, yeah, we should look into that Twitter thing for sure. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe and just I don't know, chill. Just remember to chill.